Mr. Knezik, Dr. Chasson, Mr. Hidalgo. All right, I will call this regular meeting to order. All right, the first matter on the agenda before we get to the budget is the revised policy JCDAE, student use in electronic telecommunications devices.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve.
All right, can I get a second? Item. This is the communications policy we discussed last week that was revised.
I will second.
All right, a second by Mr. Knezik. All right, any comments from members of the public on the cell phone policy? All right, members of the board, Mr. Centani.
Am I correct in reading that? Is it final revised or final clean?
The revised version, if you'll look at that first attachment, has a lot of red and yellow and blue and strike-throughs and underlines. So I put a clean copy of that proposal with what it would look like in our policy manual for easy reading.
Thank you.
So there were several items on the policy proposed last week that we requested some clarification on. So I know, Dr. Chasson, you had some concerns last week, so I'll give you a minute to review. Mr. Lashley.
While we're waiting on Dr. Chasson, I will say to my fellow board members, the phone calls I did receive concerning this from parents showed support for the policy, as well as relief that the cell phones wouldn't be confiscated and kept for 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, that parents could immediately pick them up. And I basically got positive phone calls.
If I could, Madam President,
yes,
most of the changes that the board requested would be found in paragraph 3. We did try to, at the end of paragraph 2, we did try to define the regular academic day as opposed to the previous language was school day. And at the bottom we have, at the document of the bottom, we have a definition of the regular academic day to try to clarify that so that at a game or after school, there's no confiscation involved. But when the student arrives on campus in the morning, put it away, turn it off, and when the bell rings in the afternoon, you can get it out again.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Dr. Chasson?
The willful disobedience when it comes to the refusal to relinquish, what was the corresponding willful disobedience punishment for just a kid?
Regular routine willful disobedience would be in-school suspension, typically, for a first offense. And so we did, in that third paragraph, took away the verbiage of be disciplined for willful disobedience and simplified the sentence just to say student's refusal to relinquish the device shall result in the student being recommended for expulsion, and took out the willful disobedient component of that.
Okay. If we were going to define the student's refusal to relinquish as willful disobedience, even if we take out the terminology willful disobedience, the actual technical meaning or definition is still in the sentence. So I'm just trying to wrap my mind around why recommended for expulsion. I understand that if we say we're going to expel you, kids tend to give it up at that hearing. But do we deem remaining where you're not supposed to versus, I mean, it's a direct order from an adult. Do we deem the cell phone a little more serious of an offense than?
In that respect, yes, because the principals felt there needed to be a reasonably serious consequence for failure to comply, because in all honesty, a lot of students would say, put me in ISS, I'm keeping my phone. And so we didn't want to take the kids out of instructional time in that respect, because sometimes the kids make a decision on the spur of the moment and aren't really thinking through the impact of them being out of class.
Okay.
Mr. Broussard?
Mr. Craig, we spoke earlier about a specific language. It says that this policy is from bell to bell. My understanding that we responsible for the children from bus stop to bus stop. Could it be understood by the parents or by the students that riding the bus to and from school can also be counted as disciplinary action if you are not following the rules, if you are misusing the phone? Even though it's not written in the policy, a bus ride to and from school can also be included as school hours, even though it says bell to bell.
And actually, Mr. Broussard, paragraph 2, the end of paragraph 2 does specifically include school buses.
All right, is there any additional comment or questions from the board? Then, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Six for, one against.
All right, Section 2.2, review of the budget recap and timeline. Mr. Guidry?
The calendar reflects that we've pushed our meetings back by a week. We have our meeting tonight, May 16th. Everything that had previously been scheduled for the 16th, we moved to the 23rd, which resulted in the public advertisement and public inspection period being pushed back a week to where the public inspection period would end on June 14th. But because of the inspection period that we had originally extended beyond what we're required to have it available, we were able to keep the special board meeting to adopt both the public hearing and the special board meeting to adopt the budget on the original date that had been scheduled previously. So meetings pushed back a week with the adoption still on the original scheduled date. I'd ask if they have any questions with regards to this timeline.
No questions or comments? You can go to the next subject.
Next agenda item is the group insurance fund proposed budget.
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Hurdaga.
the last meeting, I had requested that we remove this item from the last agenda for a future meeting, and that future meeting was, I'd never requested a future meeting. I'd like to request the same thing, but have it put on the meeting on the 23rd, which is coming up.
Okay. So you making that as a motion or just a request?
I'm just asking to remove it from
Okay.
the agenda.
All right. Any objections or comments from the board? All right. While it's not a motion, any members of the public have any comments about deferring this till next Tuesday on the insurance budget? All right, Mr. Guidry, Dr. Aguilar, any objection? All right. Then, Mr. Guidry, if you can defer the insurance budget till next Tuesday, the meeting
Yes.
next Tuesday. Okay. The next item is the preliminary report for the 17-18 general fund budget summary. Mr. Guidry?
Okay, we'll need just a second to get that particular attachment open. While waiting, this particular scenario basically takes off from where we left off at our last meeting on the 9th. We began with scenario 2 and revised it so that we are, in essence, removing the revenue increases that were being proposed for both sales taxes and revenue and property taxes. In removing those revenues, it put us in a position of having to identify approximately $7.6 million of expenditure reductions or offsets. Because in essence, at that point, by removing the revenue, given the fact that we had a balanced budget at that time, give or take $60,000, it basically required that we come up with an offset for that $7.6 million. So with that said, before getting into some of the proposed cuts, or all of the proposed cuts that we have listed, I thought I'd begin with fund balance, just to give us an idea, first of all, of where we're starting, and then we're going to move down to what happens if the board approves moving forward with all of the recommended cuts, with the idea being that the Economic Stabilization Fund will be somewhere in between where we started and that number if we were to make all the cuts, just to give us a feel for that. So having said that, the fund balance is broken down into several different categories. We're going to focus on the committed category. Our beginning Economic Stabilization Fund of $65.5 million reflects where we were at June 30, 2016, after being audited, and then unassigned. Unassigned is basically fund balance that has not been classified in the categories above unassigned. So in essence, those funds are over and above the economic stabilization requirements. They're over and above the assigned fund balance requirements. So for a little clarification or a little added information, for the current year, when we budgeted utilizing fund balance of $5 million, this is a line item that it would have been funded by. The total beginning fund balance, $88.9 million. You can see the other classifications for that fund balance is basically amounts that are spoken for, so to speak. So the two line items we'll focus on are the Economic Stabilization Fund, the $65.5 million, unassigned of $9.49 million. So that's basically our starting point. So what we'll do is we'll go all the way down to the bottom of the schedule, where our ending fund balance is reflected. Ending proposed fund balance is reflected. I would ask that you keep in mind that this assumes that all of the cuts presented are made. So if they aren't, I thought that it would be a benefit to review the fund balances anyway to provide us with that range. We're starting out with 65.5. If we make all of the cuts, I'm sorry, prior to making all of the cuts, the requirement increase for economic stabilization fund increases to $69.6 million. That's because of the increase to our total expenses. If all of the cuts are made, then that $69.6 million would be closer to about $67.5 million. So our range is going to be anywhere from $65.5 million to $69.6 million, just to give us an idea of what the economic stabilization fund would be. If we were at $69.6 million when we're said and done, if you look at the unassigned line item, it shows $5.3 million. So that's the amount of fund balance that's available over and above all of the designations that are made in preceding lines. So with that said, I would ask if there are any questions with regards to the fund balance range in terms of economic stabilization fund and unassigned fund balance.
Mr. Centani?
Mr. Guidry, correct me if I'm wrong, so if we had at a general fund of $278 million, you're saying that the economic stabilization fund should be $69.6
That's correct.
million? And so if we are cutting $7.5 million, it's going to go down by a quarter of that?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just making sure I understood exactly where we got, how we got to the 67.5. Thank you.
Right. So if there are no other questions, back to that part of this schedule where we're looking at proposed cuts. Let's just start at the beginning. And so what we'll do is we'll ask if there's any questions with regards to those line items that were presented in scenario 2 that repeated here. So that would be the first line item, contingency standard budgeted amount, all the way through furniture, Thibodeau STEM Academy, with exception of the Leader in Me, which is right above furniture, Thibodeau STEM Academy. So if y'all would scroll down through those line items.
Mr. Guidry, it would help if you let us know when you change file names and also what page number you're on, because these pages are numbered.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to go back to the ratio, the staffing appeals, all this stuff. So last year, I remember I'll just kind of recap our conversation from last week, where you said that right now, as of today, we're about 60 teachers over the ratio. Is that an accurate statement?
Okay. Sorry, we were looking at page numbers. We're on page 3, Mr. Knezen.
As of today, we're about 60 teachers over the ratio per our conversation last week. Is that accurate?
40, and then...
Or did the 60 include the 15 that I'm looking at right here? So we had 40 appeals last year,
Yes,
right?
it would be 40 plus 20 plus 15.
40 plus 20, and then the 15 for this year. So as of right today, we're 60 over the ratio.
Yes.
Okay,
If you
all
wanna
right,
look at
that was my first, I asked that question mainly for the benefit of those joining us tonight that
Well,
weren't here last week.
I just wanted to clarify on the line item, regular ed staffing allocation, changing from +2,
I'm going there too,
okay.
yeah.
That is something that if it's approved, it's changing the allocation, but it is an increase. To answer your question, it would be an increase over,
And does that come out to, let me see, I gotta get my calculator out now. 1,340, we still using $67,000 or for
Yes.
a teacher?
this will probably
So
be our
that's-
last year.
So that's 20, that's 20. Is that the 20 you're talking about, the +2 to +1? 40 plus 20 plus 15? Okay. So, before we get to any decreases or any cuts, we're adding 75 permanent teaching positions to our payroll, correct?
75 positions for the 17-18 school year.
That's what I'm saying, yes. Okay. All right, I'm there with you now. And then we go to increase student-teacher ratio +1. What does that mean? That go, like, for instance, does that take kindergarten from 23 to 1 to 24 to 1?
That's correct. As I mentioned, the last line item is furniture, Thibodeau STEM. So anything below that, we want to keep that in place so that we only needed to take a look at what was below that to see what changes were made.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that's why it was added there as opposed to adjusting the existing line item.
Okay, so then, let's go back to the +2 to +1 per section. That is not going from 23 to 1 to 22 to 1. That is staying at 23 to 1 and then saying that you have to have number of sections plus 1 child before you get an additional teaching
And then
position.
one over that to get that teaching slot. That's
Okay.
correct.
So, all right, and then I'll hold my other questions about the decreases in teaching personnel until we get to that part. Thank you.
All right, and if you don't mind, I know some board members have some suggestions or recommendations for changes, so I think at this time I'd like them to go ahead and list those so we can add them to the bottom of the list, so that when we start going through these item by item, they'll be on there and we'll be prepared. So I know, Mr. Knezik, that you have some.
And Mr. Guidry, I don't think I'm going to be able to refer to the actual budget line item, but I think you will be able to find it. The first thing I'd like to remove is the line item for Act 1 lawsuit. I would like to remove that. And if I go too fast, let me know.
I would just say, Mr. Knezik, that in the subsequent line items, we did in fact remove it simply because regardless of what the outcome is, if it stays as is, we'd make the payment in the current year as opposed to having a budget in next year. So if we move forward and we're successful, then the point's moot. But either way, it's not in next year's budget at this point.
Okay. As long as it's not in this year's or next year's or the next year's budget, I'm fine with that. The second thing is, excuse me.
Would it be better for us to zero it out?
That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
All right. The second thing is transportation. There's up where it says transportation savings, rezoning 20 routes. I'd like to increase that amount, and I'll just give you a number. It's 20% of the budget, which should come out to a total of $3,114,907. And that would be a 20% overall reduction in transportation. And while I understand, I'm not going to talk at length now, but while I understand that may seem like a dramatic change, I do not think we will ever achieve any sort of true efficiencies until we are forced to do so. So I would like to recommend that. And I'll also point out that staff's already recommending a change of 1.6 million. So what I'm asking is for us to close that gap and find another 1.5 million in transportation. I have some ideas, and we can talk about that at another time. Right now, total 3.114907 million. Next thing would be, this is a little complicated to explain, I think. We currently, and I'm going to use the word supplement as in provide funding for, in that manner, the retiree medical plan, so that we offset basically the premiums to a tune of about if I remember right, it was $1.74 million, so that we stay on a Blue Cross plan when we had an opportunity to go to a Humana Advantage plan. As I understand it, and again, this isn't the time to go into the debate of that, the plans are comparable, yet we have supplemented that plan with $2 million of school board money. I would like to put an end to that. I understand that we're obligated to this plan until the end of this year, so I would like to reduce whatever that line item is by 50% of $1.94 million, so that in 2018, we won't have that financial option to supplement. And do you follow what I'm saying as far as where that comes from and what it's spent on?
So in 17-18, it would be 50% of the 1.94 million.
Right, and that means that come January 1st, 2018, that money's not there for us to supplement that plan. So when the time comes for us to make a decision to change insurance, that money won't be there for us to make that choice.
Mr. Guidry, is that in the general fund budget or on the insurance that we've deferred till next week?
Well, the contribution that the board makes is a part of this.
I would like to, if you're ready, add $366,000 for the purchase of Chromebooks for ninth graders. And as far as I understand it, we currently have money budgeted to purchase Chromebooks for some ninth graders at some schools, yet not all ninth graders at all schools. And I just have a problem with it. I think that if we either going to do an all or nothing, we're either going to buy Chromebooks for all the ninth graders so that they can keep them. Now, this is going to have to be if we continue with this electronic media process until technology changes and they just zap the information into our brain. But as long as we're using these types of media, we're going to have to do this every year from now on. So this would need to be a recurring budget item to buy Chromebooks for the ninth graders. And the idea is that the ninth grader continues to keep those devices through their high school career. And again, as far as I understand it, we're funding some Chromebooks for some high school students in the ninth grade. And what I'm asking to do is to go ahead and fund the rest of the students for the in the district in ninth grade. And I understand that to be a total of $366,000. Yes, sir.
That's a quick question.
Dr. Aguilar, would these Chromebooks eventually replace textbooks and workbooks? Or is this in addition to textbooks and workbooks?
Mr. Hidalgo, it's reasonable to assume that they would eventually replace hardback textbooks. We're not there at this point, but it's reasonable to assume that. Mr. Knezik, I'd like LaShawna, while you're thinking about this, we have this open for discussion to make sure $366,000 is adequate to provide all ninth graders with Chromebooks, if you don't mind, Mr. Knezik. Just to make sure that number's solid.
Yes, sir. Mr. Guidry, the next item would be SRO and SSO funding. I would like to eliminate that from the budget. And again, we can talk about that at length. I don't know if now is the time or later is the time. There is a position I would like to restore. There's a position being removed called marketing and recruitment. That is actually a misnomer or a mislabeled position, although that's what the current position is held or titled. That individual is actually the person who is designing, refurbishing, changing the schools of choice program, as far as I understand it. Dr. Aguilar, please correct me if I'm wrong. I would like to preserve that position because we are in the middle of changing the schools of choice program over this summer and move it under the supervision of Ms. Samick. I would like to propose a overall cut to schools of choice of 5%. And I think that's all for now. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Knezik has kindly given us his suggestions. Those matters have not been noticed, so we may discuss them tonight, but they will not be acted upon. They will be on the notice for next week so that members of the public who have an interest in those particular items will have an opportunity to comment on those. Right. All right,
Madam President, is Mr. Knezik the only
Hidalgo?
one that gets to make recommendations?
No, I just wanted to make that comment so no one starts panicking. So, Mr. Hidalgo, go ahead.
Mr. Knezik, I'm not going to have as impactful of a list as you do, but I do want to remove, Mr. Guidry, the increased student-teacher ratio +1. I'd also like to ask
Mr. Centani.
I think this will probably be a lot smoother if we like, you're asking to add a removal, right? Just add other cuts that you may have, because things that are already on there will have the opportunity later to actually make a motion to vote to remove them.
Yeah, we're going to go through them line by line because there's a lot of people here to talk. So,
There's no need to just add that to the list. You can just make a motion, is my point.
Okay.
okay.
But we're not doing that tonight.
The things that were noticed, we can choose to take action on those tonight.
Why don't we discuss, unless someone else discuss Mr. Knezik's long list?
All right. Well, I'm going to go from the top down the list so that anyone here has an opportunity to speak. Does anyone else have anything to add that's not already on the list? All right. All right. So, Mr. Guidry, is it all right if we kind of go down the suggested cuts line by line?
Ms. Morris,
All right.
from the beginning or starting from where we left off?
Well, let me I kind of have some highlights on here. So, this is not a decrease, it's an actual increase in tuition for Early College Academy. Is there anyone here in the, from members of the public to comment on that particular item? All right, members of the board. Dr. Chasson.
As for SLCC, was there any, there was long discussions about possible savings for UL. Can anybody comment on that?
This is the Early College Academy at SLCC. It's not the due enrollment. Due enrollment we have with UL and
Right.
SLCC agreements.
But as far as Early College Academy moving to UL,
So we did talk to UL, and unfortunately, we haven't made any progress, at, getting them to commit.
okay.
Mr. Centani.
And someone explained to me, so I'm looking at Cost Center 1481, titled Early College Academy, where we are spending, pardon me while I zoom in, $796,180.75, of which $241,965.30 are teachers' salaries. So is that, am I to read that correctly, that it is 3.5 teachers at the Early College Academy? Plus a guidance counselor, plus aides, a PE teacher, secretary salary.
And there is a recommendation to add a half-day Spanish teacher to ECA on here as well.
Okay. No, and this is not a criticism of that. My question ends up being that my appreciation of the increase in tuition at ECA is that this is an increase in full tuition for all SLCC students. Is that correct? Or just our early college academy students?
This particular increase is just for our early college academy students.
Not for all SLCC students?
Not for due enrollment.
Okay, so my question becomes, what percentage of the full tuition for a regular SLCC student is our tuition? Did I make that clear enough?
What
Okay.
percentage of,
So do we pay a percentage of the regular SLCC full-time student tuition, or do we
All of
pay,
it.
we pay the full tuition?
full tuition, yes.
And yet we are still providing teachers and education to the students who are paying full tuition?
Mainly in the freshman and sophomore semesters, because they're only taking, I believe, 3 credit hours per semester. Not until they get into their junior year that they really are full-time college students for the most part.
And how many students total do we have in ECA? I don't expect you to know that.
We have someone checking.
I'm sure they're gonna tell us.
Right, so for the 9th and 10th grade year, they're taking high school courses, not college courses. So
Right.
we're paying for the teachers for those courses.
And we are paying 3, like,
Plus whatever.
we're
comp.
certainly paying per credit hour, right? Tuition? We're certainly paying tuition per credit hour? Okay.
260, Mr. Centani.
Dr. Chasson?
Mr. Centani, that was the discussion that we were trying to have behind closed doors about possibly moving early college academy and basing it out of a school. Therefore, those kids that are only taking that one college course in that freshman and sophomore year would then be able to take those courses that we have teachers that are already paying. They would be on a on a high school campus. And that's what I was hoping for a headway on, but we didn't seem to make it.
All right, any further discussion on this item? Nope. Mr. Lashley?
Would it be possible to ask Dr. Chasson to elaborate a little more on his plan, or is this not the time for that?
I don't think that's a budget issue as much as a facilities issue.
Or,
So,
I mean, as far as budget, I mean, how much money would something like that save?
A kid starts at early college academy, freshman, sophomore year. They're only taking one college course. Right. So therefore, we're spending a lot of money to educate kids in their first 2 years at the early college academy when they can be on a regular high school campus. So if we could base early college academy
That's not.
at
Dr. Chasson, I don't believe that's correct. We have instructors that are on our payroll covering those high school courses on the SLCC campus. That increase that you're seeing there is only for the tuition.
No, sir. When it comes down to the actual amount of money that we're paying for a kid to go their freshman year to early college academy, we found the savings between me, myself, Mr. Craig, Mr. Guidry, where if you base the kid out of, let's say, Northside, then that kid could actually go to school at Northside freshman year, sophomore year, take a class at SLCC, and then be on SLCC's campus. There was a tremendous savings.
Mr. Guidry?
I did want to respond to Mr. Centini's question. It's 6 teaching slots that are reflected in the ECA budget.
Right. All right, so I'd like to ask my fellow board members, how do you want to proceed as far as, do you want to make a vote on each item as we go through if it was on the agenda last week, or do you want to wait till we get through to the end and then make a general motion? Okay. All right. Then the next item is the transportation recommendation to cut 20 routes. And of course, Mr. Knezik has recommended a change to increase the cut to 20% of the total transportation budget. So is there anyone here in the audience to comment on the original recommendation, which was to cut 20 routes? All right, members of the board?
Board members, I just wanted to add, although we'll talk specifically about this 1.6 million, I think that there's a lot more money that we can find to save in the transportation budget. Part of that, as far as transportation goes, we are very, as far as I understand it, a very generous district. We have just about front door service to most children, where the walk to stop allowances are 0.2 miles for elementary school students, 0.4 for middle school, 0.6 for high school students. We don't currently use those limits for walk to stop. I also think that there are a lot more efficiencies in the way that we pick up students. We don't use a significant number of satellite stops. We have buses running across, mini buses running across zones. So I think that whether it's this proposed decrease or my proposed decrease, that if we pose the challenge to the transportation department, that they can develop routes that are a little bit more compliant with the walk to stop distance allowances, and maximize in-zone bus transportation and satellite stops to transport children from in-between zones.
All right, any other board members? I do seem to recall, Dr. Aguilar, that when we purchased the new transportation software, it was going to save us $1 million a year on transportation. So it seems to me that the 1.6 million could at least be increased by that $1 million in savings we're supposed to be seeing from that additional software, but that can maybe be rolled into the consideration of Mr. Knezik's suggestion.
If I could, the issue for us, and we're willing to chair, I got transportation coming in, we can do that. We can work towards 20% easily. When routing worked on this, the software was purchased about a year ago, and as we got into November, we put the GPS units on. Our routing specialist works every day, all day on this, and typically the plan was to send out the new routes for bidding at the end of this month. We're almost in. I went to transportation last month when the superintendent charged us with cutting $1.6 million. And in terms of addressing out-of-zone transportation, we think we can cut the 20 routes easily. I've talked to Mr. Guidry in terms of operational costs and transportation, those issues that'll take away from it. It's getting late in the year to cut in-zone routes. When we implemented the initial project, we basically took the same framework of in-zone kids and knew that we could make the out-of-zone routes more efficient. And the concern for transportation will be on basically 3 months' notice. We're going to have to redo all of the internal routes, still bid out the routes to the drivers. That wouldn't happen till probably July at this point. Even with the out-of-zone adjustments, the bus drivers have to pick up routes. They have to drive the routes. My concern is on basically 3 months' notice that we won't have an effective transportation system in the fall. And I guess I would ask the board to consider working with us on 10% this year, roughly 1.6 million, and then give transportation the task of cutting another 10% for 18-19.
Well, Mr. Craig, I appreciate all the work that you've done. I certainly do, and I understand that there's a lot of work involved. It's a very complicated algorithm to try to get these routes put together. But if we don't try, we won't ever achieve a 20% reduction. While it may be challenging, this whole experience is challenging, and I challenge you and I have faith in you that you will be able to come back and get close to that 20%.
All right, I see that some members of the transportation department are here if anyone has any questions for them.
I guess I would ask if Miss Charity Buller could come up and address in terms of, she's the nuts and bolts of the rerouting and the routing specialist. And I apologize for putting her on the spot. I do apologize. But I know this is going to fall on your shoulders in terms of, and there's a microphone up there. You can go to that
So
one.
Charity, just to be, so you have a context here, Mr. Knezik is asking us to find an additional $1.6 million worth of cuts in the transportation department.
Yeah, we've been working, we've been working diligently on just trying to get all the routes together for August. If we just really need to know about how we're going to go about doing that, if we're going to implement a 1 mile, a half a mile, if it's schools of choice, satellite stop locations, if we do that, we just need to be backed on any decisions, and we'll try. We'll definitely try, but it will be, it'll be very hard, and we'll have to bring more people to the team, and it'll be a lot of long hours.
Thank you.
Ms. Morrison?
Currently, I've been having quite a few calls about kids not being picked up now. So I'm kind of concerned, with the major cuts, what's going to be the result of that? Because now, and what is the reason why kids are not being picked up today, like this past year? What is occurring now?
Well, I think we do cater to the schools of choice programs, and we go above and beyond, and we pick up almost door to door, and those routes are an hour and a half long. So they're very limited on what they can do. So if you're driving an hour and a half, you can only drive for a couple of schools, where if you're driving 1 hour or 45 minutes, you can drive for 3. So if a driver cuts out, they're very hard to cover. The out-of-zone routes are so hard to cover with the sub because they're already driving, they're booked. Time is our challenge.
So in your opinion, during the rerouting, you think we could save $1 million? And because you look at this every day, so
Yeah.
you see opportunities where we can save a lot of money if we do rerouting, looking at the zoning, moving forward.
I would definitely. I think if we do satellite up the stops, I really think we will save, because like I said, time is our handicap right now. It's very difficult to make it efficient if they have no time. They're going across the parish every day. They're limited on what they can do.
So our parents would be required to bring their kids to wherever this satellite pickup. Do you see any potential problems with that, with parents that work and have to be to work at a certain time? And
absolutely.
So we have to be prepared.
It would be a very big change, and if you tack on the other 1.5 million, it will be a drastic change to save that money. And I mean, a 1 mile walk, or 1 mile no transport. It's just very big changes we would have to make to save the money.
Thank you.
For Hidalgo.
Is it accurate that we currently have satellite stops in place now?
We do, but we've always had the same ones, even
Right.
from before when I came in.
Right.
We've always used the same satellite stop locations unless it was a new program that was implemented. If it was a new program, we would create very satellite locations.
Let's take the southern end of the parish, District 9. Are you kind of familiar with District 9, the geographical area? How many satellite locations are there now, roughly?
For what school program?
Well, I mean, how many
I haven't
satellite?
broken it down into zones, but I can.
No, that's fine.
If you need
The
more.
original 1.6 million that I think you all have identified, was that from reducing the number of satellite locations?
Yes. Right now, I think we have 945 satellite stop locations for all the schools.
And how many did you have before you found?
Yes, 945.
And how many did you have before you cut the 1.6 million?
No, that's before the cuts, Mr. Hidalgo.
Yeah, that's before
How
the
many
cuts.
do you
If
have
we had
after the cut?
cuts? I would probably 2 or 3 per zone.
Okay, well,
I mean, it would reduce it drastically.
And fellow board members, I want to put it in perspective. If we save $3 million, in transportation, then we can fund a $43 million wing at Lafayette High School. I mean, it is what it is.
We also have gifted, we have ESL, we have a lot of programs. We just, if we can just address all of them so we know which way to go.
First, I'd make the comment that you want to be backed up if there's any board policy that needs to be changed that you feel is restricting you in being creative and flexible in your designing of the routes. Please bring it to us, and I'm happy to help you try to figure out how to be more effective and more efficient at the same time. The second question I have is 900, 2 or 3 per zone now? Like, so does that end up being?
I mean, what I'm
count
going to
that
look at is I'm going to see where the kids are at. I don't think we can use one location per zone because it's just too many students per zone. I mean, you can't stick 300 kids at a park.
Well, then let me ask you that. Let me ask you this. So the way this works, the way I'm imagining this works right now, is that you take J. Wallace James, right? And it has children from all over the parish. So you're proposing to make 2 or 3 different stops in every elementary school zone to get J. Wallace James kids
No,
to school?
not every elementary school zone. I would probably do a north, south, east, west.
Okay, so it'd be 4 for James.
So it would just release those. It just depends on how many students. I mean, you do a north, south, east, west, but you'll use different locations. So it could be 2 or 3 different stops because you can't stick 300 students in one location. We'll have to get permission from the property owners. We just got to make sure that,
And this question is,
probably do bus loads, but it will keep them from driving an hour and a half. Now they'll drive 25 minutes.
this question is
able
for
to do other things.
This next question is going to be for demonstration purposes. I'm not asking for us to cut this. If we eliminated all schools of choice transportation, if all we did was brought kids to their zone school, how much money, spitball a number for me, how much money does that save?
We would cut 60 buses. I'll let Billy
So we
come
save
up with the number.
1.6 we save $1.6 million for $1 million for 20 routes. So you're saying $3 million.
I would really think if we had no out of zone whatsoever, I'm shooting at 60 buses. just
Okay.
ballpark.
So then what we're talking about here is that we're starting at $3 million in reductions, and we're gonna this is the way I would approach it anyway. I would just start off by just eliminating all the transportation and then adding back routes that make sense instead of trying to shoehorn satellite stops that we've been using for years and years and years to the point where we have 945 satellite stops.
I agree.
I would probably pick 20 places in the parish.
Absolutely.
And
get permission, get permission from the property owners and do it right. I agree.
I'll just give you my idea, just to put this in your head. If you look at the schools of choice in the parish, they're basically just a big circle, right? Myrtle Place, J. Wallace James, Prairie, Plantation, Paul Bro, David Thibodeau.
You can double up.
Take 10 buses and let them drive circles around the parish all day and make people bring their children to the loop.
Right. Yes. Yes, we would definitely do that. Try and fill them at capacity. They could drop.
Maybe that won't work. That's just
All right,
me thinking.
Oh, you get it. Absolutely.
Mr. Hidalgo.
You mentioned 945 satellite stops. What's the average amount of students could be put on a bus? Average. I know there are different bus sizes, but what's the
It depends.
average?
If it's high school, I mean, it's the passenger size is, the bus. It's the capacity 66. But realistically,
Yeah.
I mean, high school students, you're going to do 50. Middle school, are
I guess this is my
Five.
concern. You mentioned that it doesn't make sense to put 300 students in one spot, and I totally agree with that. However, if we have 31,000 students and we have 945 satellite spots, that's an average of 32 kids per bus.
Oh yeah.
That's problematic.
Yeah, it's very inefficient. right
Thank you.
now.
Thank
we
you.
just, if we make changes, we just ask that we are backed up 100%, and we will roll with it.
I would like to note, I've been talking to a special ed today. We still would have to provide appropriate transportation for gifted students. And ESL, yes, ma'am.
And I would just point out that for those kids who are voluntarily going to an out-of-zone school with the schools of choice, the school system has absolutely no obligation to provide any transportation at all. We're required to provide transportation to their in-zone school, unless it's a special ed type program. So we are reducing services, but with the failure of the sales tax proposal, we have to make significant cuts, and those cuts are going to affect everybody: students, parents, teachers, staff, retirees. And that's why we're going through this process right now. Okay.
If the board moves forward with this, I would request that you consider board policy that no out-of-zone transportation would be available.
All right. I can't recall if I asked for members of the public on the transportation issue for comments. All right. Okay, the next item was to add additional positions outside of the student-teacher staffing ratio. I have a question on this that relates to some later items. I see you want to add in a social worker and an instructional strategist, but later on you're asking for cuts to those positions as well. So for example, the recommended cut to instructional strategist is to cut 11, but we would add back 1, so it'd be a cut of 10. I'm looking at Schedule 2 on the item where it lists the additional staff.
That you're correct.
Okay.
We had one school, David Thibodeau, that did not have an instructional strategist, so we were adding to equalize, but then we're also now recommending cutting 11. So it's possible that David Thibodeau would still be included by sharing an instructional strategist or having one full-time.
All right, so the current recommendations would be a net cut of 10 positions. Okay, and same thing with the social worker. You're recommending, I think, a cut of 6, but we would add 1 back, so it'd be a net cut of 5. Or is that a pupil appraisal social worker?
It's a team for pupil appraisal.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Mr. Knesset.
Dr. Aguilar, I have a question regarding, are we at, above, or below the state mandated requirements for these positions specifically?
Mr. Knesset, the 3-member testing team, evaluation team, we are 3 full teams under state law. So we're recommending and working closely with Mr. Thibodeau, recommending each year we would add back one of these 3-member teams until we get back to state compliance. Ms. Thibodeau in HR, she's looked very carefully at state law and board policy. So I'll speak to any specific positions. We can let you know what the staffing ratio is.
All right, any further comments on the additional positions? Mr. Santani?
The pre-K French immersion at Prairie, is this we already have one section of that, right?
Yes, sir.
Is this adding a second section? And I know
Yes, sir.
Myrtle Place has no sections. Does Evangeline have any sections right now?
It does not.
Do we have room at
Yes,
Prairie?
sir.
I thought Prairie was okay. I thought Prairie was severely overpopulated, but thank you.
All right. The next item is the staff reclassifications, which I think is shown on Schedule 3. Do you have any questions or comments on those reclassifications? Dr. Shassel?
I'd like to add that item to be zeroed out.
So you want to zero out all of the reclassifications? Right. Well, we've been discussing everything, so let's go ahead and discuss your reasons or open it up for questions.
It's a tough call, but it becomes easy when, we're looking at possible cutting of jobs, but then at the same time, we turn around and even though folks are probably doing jobs that maybe have added a couple of job duties, I understand the job you do on a daily basis may be worth more money, but at the same time, we're talking about cutting positions, so I can't justify giving an average of $4,000 raise to 25 some odd employees, where some of them range from $6,000 to $7,500 to $8,600, when at the same time, I've got to almost lose my mind to try to get custodians and cafeteria workers a $600 raise. I can't justify that.
All right. All right, any questions or comments from members of the audience? Okay, members of the board? Do you want to make it as a motion, Dr. Chasson? And we can act on that one now?
Yes, ma'am. Motion to zero out the budget line item for staff reclassification.
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Knezik. All right, we've already opened the floor for discussion. Any more? All right, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Sorry.
Eight for, none against.
The next item is the regular ed staffing allocation to change it from +2 to +1. Mr. Centani?
Am I allowed to discuss the increase as well now? Are we still?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Open it up.
All right, so when we left off earlier, we were at, for the fiscal year 18, we're at 75 teachers over the current ratio, which, to clarify again, if you have 3 sections of kindergarten, you must have 6 additional students before you get an additional teacher, correct?
7.
Right.
One over 6.
One over. No, I said if you had 3 sections of kindergarten, then you have on the 7th. Okay. All right. I'm with you now. I'm with you. All right. So we are 75 over before we get to the increased student teacher ratio, which reduces 9.5 teaching positions. Is that right? All right. So minus 9.5. I'm gonna sit here and get to 65.5 over the current one. Are there any other? We took the 9. We're moving 9 teaching spots to the 2002 sales tax fund and we're calling that decreased class size, I assume?
Yes. And
so what does the ratio, so that means the 20-to-1 in kindergarten and emerging schools becomes 21-to-1, and then we lower the class size back to 20 through the 2002 sales tax? Is that what I'm understanding?
For the lowering of the class size, and I would ask HR to clarify that. Doesn't necessarily apply to these line items. So I'm
really just trying to I'm really just trying to come down to what we're actually being proposed here, because we seem to, I'd like to unpack it into one reasonably easy to understand number as to what's actually going on with the number of teachers in the district.
The question is for the line item for emerging schools. It says an additional teaching slots, 9, to be moved to the 2002 sales tax fund. Are those existing teaching slots that are over and above? In other words, this is a separate issue from the other line items altogether, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Right, that would have to reduce the pupil-teacher ratio from what the other schools or what else is going on. Right, for us to do.
So currently, the student-teacher ratio is reduced there. So the number of slots that are being added as a result of that already being in place would be, those positions would be moved to the 2002 tax. We're not looking to reduce it further.
Right, we're not reducing it further. But
Right.
the existing positions.
So the staffing ratios for the emerging schools are lower than the regular ratios. So in addition to the other line items, we're proposing that we move 9 of the positions that are due to the lesser student-teacher ratio to the 2002 sales tax.
So the line that says
9 existing slots.
So the line that says increase student-teacher ratio +1. Now, I remember 2 years ago when we did a legitimate +1 across the board, and it was something like $5.5 million. We're doing we say +1 here, and it's $636,000. What does +1 mean?
+1 is in the example that you gave. If you had 3 sections, well, first of all, the +1, the $1,340,000 or the $635,000?
The $635,000.
That would be increasing it by 1, the current student-teacher ratio. So 23 to or 24 would go to 25, 25 to 26.
So how is this number 10% of what it was 2 years ago?
I'll have to defer to HR since it was their calculation and they.
Sorry, Mr. Satani, what is your question?
So
Was it
2 years. So 2 years ago, we increased. We will keep using kindergarten for example, right? We increased kindergarten from 22 to 1 to 23 to 1.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, 23 to 24, didn't we? Yes, 23 to 24. I apologize. When we did that, the budget number that we used was $5.5 million
Okay.
that we saved. Why is going from 24 to 25 10% of that number? Why are we only saving $636,500 if we are going to add +1 across the board?
Well, it could be the population, it could, how many students you have, or it could be where the breaking point. Sometimes you don't save because it's spread out across the different schools. That could be why.
One of the things, if I recall correctly, Mr. Santani, is that $5 million also included removing appeals. It wasn't stated separately. So when the calculation was done to increase the student-teacher ratio by 1, we also removed all of the appeals from the previous year in that same number. And that increased it quite a bit.
How many?
I can't give you the exact out.
I was going to say, do you remember how many appeals were in that?
I would be guessing at this point.
All right, so at the moment, I'm at 56.5. Teachers over and above what the current staffing ratio is, even after we go up on the staffing ratio. I'm thinking about this correctly, right? So if we end up with a staffing ratio of, and I promise I'm getting to my point, I promise. If we end up with a staffing ratio that we increase the number of students in the classroom, yet we still end up with 56.5 teachers more than that staffing ratio requires or indicates, what good is the staffing ratio? Like, help me out here. What's the number come back to? If we're 25-1 in kindergarten, what does the number of teachers come out to? Like, we're 56.5 over what number?
Well, Mrs. Santani, let me just say the way it works is,
Well, I understand the way it works.
Dr. Aguilar comes in and says you can only add so many teachers due to the budget, and we just run the scenarios until we can come up with that number. I mean, so that, now, if we get where we have and we tell them, well, you need extra teachers here because you're not staffed properly, then we go in and we have to add because we want everyone staffed properly. But as far as what you're asking me, we've really never, now I do have a scenario here, and it would say that we're cutting 9.5 teachers from last year. This is one scenario that you will be asked to vote on later on. On number 7, Kim, do you have, I think it was adding 15.5 on scenario 7 we had that you're looking at now. Our records show if we use that scenario, what Mr. Guidry has presented, that's 15.5, adding 15.5. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, but we play with it and we over and over to try to get it and use different formulas to try to make sure the schools are staffed properly, but yet we maximize our dollar amount. We know that we don't have an unlimited checkbook. So if you'd like to ever come in and look at the staffing, but I can tell you if we would have a certain grade, like we would have Myrtle, and if they have so many students in each class, we break it down per grade, per class, how many will be in that class.
Do the additional teachers above the ratio take into account those classes that are below the ratio, special ed classes, gifted classes, some of the immersion classes that just don't reach the ratio?
The emerging schools are only staffed at the lower ratio in the core classes.
Right, I'm not talking about the emerging schools. I know that there are many programs that do not reach the staffing levels.
Right.
Gifted, for instance.
Right.
Chinese immersion, I don't believe is at the staffing level.
Right.
So I know that there are several classes that just don't reach the 22 or 23 or 24. So is that what accounts for those additional teachers above the ratio?
No, that's another scenario.
They have a different ratio themselves. So
That's
SPED
another
has, depending
spreadsheet.
on if you're mild, moderate, or severe, you
another-
have 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 6-to-1.
Or gifted.
Or gifted, which I think is 15 or 17 or something like that.
No, that's in
I know at a prior meeting, Dr. Aguilar, you explained that the reason for doing this at this point is that we've been disadvantaged in the past by searching for teachers after the start of the school year and after they've already been hired by other school districts. Is that the reason for going back from a +2 to a +1?
That's correct. You may remember that this year's budget had approximately 45 appeal positions in the budget. We were staffing so tight that literally within 1 or 2 additional students to enroll in a grade level in a school, we were adding an additional teacher. We actually blew through those 45 appeal slots literally in the first 6 weeks of the school year. I told the HR department we wanted to staff in such a way that we would staff generously, knowing situations where we were going to have expected increase in student population. So in effect, you see on this sheet, and Mr. Santani, I know where you're going. I'm not sure I can follow the numbers. But here's where we are. We had 45 appeals last year. This year, this paper shows we're projecting 15 appeals, and we're projecting 20 additional teachers to be added to the budget, which is roughly the 45 positions we had last year. I don't think there's a principal in here who would say to you that they are overstaffed on teachers. We are staffing these classrooms at the ratios adopted by the board. I want to commit to you that we will clean up the process of reporting staffing needs to the board, because this 2+1, 1+1, staffing through appeals, staffing through enrollment increases is confusing all of us. So
Please let me know when you're ready to get rid of that staffing ratio.
Well, what I'd like to do is come back to you and show you a report that shows the number of teachers needed by school, so that you can see that we're treating all schools fairly. We can all count the number of teachers, and you will then have one number that represents the teacher staffing needs for the district, and then we'll likely still want you to budget a couple of additional positions for unexpected enrollment increases.
Mr.
All right.
Santani, could I just, I'm sorry. I just want to say the appeals, you keep, I think when you refer to them, you think that we're overstaffed because we added those appeals last year. But that doesn't mean we're overstaffed, because those appeals a lot of times were added due to enrollment increases. So we don't start out overstaffed due to the appeals, because there were really positions we needed. We called them appeals, but they were enrollment increases. So when we run our reports, it does not look like we're overstaffed. If I'm understanding you correctly from what you're saying, I'm trying to follow you, so.
Well, let me make a point about last year's budget, because last year's budget, when we started out, had a decrease of the prior year's staffing appeals count. So let's say it was 40, and they had a line item decrease of 40 teachers, and then a line item increase of 40 appeals. And I appreciate what the staffing appeals are for, but to my mind, if it is a true enrollment increase, then that should be taken care of through the ratio. And when there's a line item that says staff, reduce or increase staff to the ratio, then those appeals should be transferring from the appeals line item to the ratio line item. Now, I think this whole exercise is not the best way we could do it. Let me say that. I'd much rather Dr. Aguilar's suggestion, where he comes to us and says, I need X number of teachers. And then we can very easily compare our enrollment increases from year to year, our enrollment decreases from year to year by school. We can compare our teacher increases and decreases per year by school. And then we can also probably start to afford principals the flexibility to, if they do value their instructional strategists, and to my understanding, principals very much value their instructional strategists, we can present principals with the option of, okay, is an instructional strategist worth 2 teachers to you? I'll let you make that decision at your own school instead of me trying to make that decision up here. This is where we all get into trouble.
Right.
Is that we try to force a one-size-fits-all on every school in the district, when J.W. Falk and Myrtle Place and Ernest Gallette are different schools. They're just different. They have different teachers, they have different children, they have different personalities. So anyway, all right, I'll get off my horse now.
Thanks. So, the budget process is obviously very complicated. With regards to the ratio recommendations and the appeals, I support what staff has done. I think that we have to make our school system more competitive in hiring teachers, and there's typically a hiring season when new teachers are graduating from college, or it's summertime and they're changing or moving during the summer. So I do think in the past we've been at a disadvantage by trying to hire the teachers we need when it's outside of that typical hiring season. So I think that, especially with an eye towards our goal of reaching an A district parish-wide and improving the performance at our emerging schools as well, we need to be as competitive as we can with our neighboring districts. So I'm in full support of the recommendations from staff on the staffing issues. Okay. Any other board members? Mr. Hidalgo.
Thank you. Madam President, I appreciate your perspective. I guess what I don't understand is every year for the past 2 years, we've made decisions during budgeting time that was supposed to have eased up this issue, and it has not been eased up at all whatsoever. Dr. Aguilar or Ms. Thibodeau, does align Reg Ed staffing to +1, does that mean the same thing as... Let me get back to my paperwork. I'm sorry. It's not the question. I want to know if a line reg ed staffing plus 1 means the same thing as reg ed staffing allocation teachers from, increased student teacher ratio plus 1. Does that mean the same thing?
Does what mean the same? Repeat your question?
Does
No.
align reg ed staffing to plus 1?
Mr. Hidalgo, the answer is no.
Okay.
You guys gave me the task of cutting $7.5 million out of the budget. So to do that, we made a recommendation to add a plus 1 to the pupil-teacher ratio.
Right. What I'm getting at is in 2015, we added plus 1 to the pupil-teacher ratio. And that line item reads align reg ed staffing to plus 1. And that line item total is $4,192,500. What I don't understand is why is increasing pupil-teacher ratio this year only equal to $936,500 when what's arguably the same thing was $4,192,000 2 years ago. We added plus 1 to the ratio 2 years in 2015.
Mr. V's going to answer your question.
Mr. Hidalgo, whenever we started, the actual number that we were going to cut with the plus 1 is actually 54 and a half teachers. Whenever we went back, we made adjustments because of the rezoning. We made adjustments because of Southside opening, because of EJ Sam opening. After we did all that, it came down to just cutting 9 and a half. There are several other, we went and if there was, one of the problems we had and why there were so many appeals is we would staff right to that ratio and the 2 plus 1. So if something got really close and they were one teacher away from getting that, we would tell them no until they actually got the student. This year we looked at it, and if they got within, let's say, 5 students of needing that extra teacher, we gave them the extra teacher. If it meant 5 teachers away from not having to cut that extra teacher, we removed it so that they didn't have to, they didn't have to cut that extra teacher. So normally with a plus 1, you would be cutting 54 and a half teachers, but with all of those adjustments we made, it brought it down to 9 and a half teachers.
Just I guess the idea of adding to the pupil-teacher ratio would equal reducing the number of teachers, not adding 20 or whatever the number is. So I got to say, my personal opinion is that adding one student in every class, 636,000. That's not. I don't know how to say it nicely. That's not worth it. Okay, it's not. I mean, if we were talking about $5 million, and that's like we had to do in 2015 when we were in the jam we were in, I'd like to see this taken out. That's just my recommendation.
All right, before I ask the audience for comments, we have a couple of other items that are in a similar vein. I want us to do the special ed staffing, adjust to staffing ratios to +2, and then the staffing appeals, which we've touched on already. So do the board members or Dr. Aguilar have any comments on those items? All right, does anyone from the audience have any comments on the recommendations to changes in ratios? Mr. Cole?
There we go. Good evening, Madam President. Jonathan Cole. I made it a point as president of LPAE to stay away from the microphone the past year, preferring to do business quietly, without a lot of fanfare, so that when I do approach the microphone, the gravity of the situation would be evident. So here I am. Good to be here, Mr. Hidalgo. I wish it was under better circumstances. +1 ratios, +2 staffing, 2002 sales tax, more students. It comes down to this. Our students are not sardines. We keep packing them in, Resources are stretched thin. And as a point of information, Madam President, Lafayette Parish School System sought an exemption to the student-teacher staffing last year at Bessie. And so I'm under the impression that that's still the effect now. So we keep adding more students to the classroom. And I understand, and I'm very well aware, Madam President, of your caution that everyone is having to tighten the belt straps, the belt loops. But it seems to be, from what we've seen here with librarians and counselors and assistant principals, all these cuts are coming at on the school side, on the classroom side. And I'm not seeing in the numbers where it's coming from the other side, the central office staff. And this is not a knock on the central office staff. I'm very well respected, respecting of the folks that that we do business with. However, it just doesn't seem like a full faith effort is being made to balance out some of the situations. So I'm not in a position to offer emotions or anything like that, but a dollar for dollar, for example, cut. You cut $1 from the classroom, you cut $1 from the district. Are we absolutely sure that we've cut everything possible other than a classroom setting? You know, that's all I've got to say about it. Again, I'm here to offer whatever I can to assist. We'll continue to offer those numbers. I respect Dr. Aguilar. I don't envy him the task or his staff. But there's some tough choices that have to be made, but it seems like we're not making all of the tough choices. Thanks.
All right, any other members of the public? Ms. Castile?
My name is Ann Herman. I'm principal of Plantation Elementary. And I want to speak to the addition of the student-teacher ratio. We cannot add more students in our classrooms. I've had 26 kids in kindergarten this year. I've had 25 kids in first grade. I agree we cannot continue to pack children in classrooms. We have to teach these children to read. We have to teach them to read, to learn. The more we have in a classroom, the less individual attention these children get. And I want to speak for our children. They can't be up here today. We need to give them the attention that they deserve, not any more children in the classroom. We need to reduce it to +2 to +1. I can't have 26 kids in a classroom again, not in kindergarten and first grade and second grade. Those are the times where we are teaching children to read. So I would appreciate your consideration in that. Thank you.
Madam President,
Mr. Hidalgo?
what is the process? It was easy to add something to the list. What's the process to get something off of the list?
Make a motion.
All right, I move that we remove increased student-teacher ratio +1 from the proposed cuts.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Hidalgo, second by Mr. Knezik. Okay, any further discussion from members of the board? All right, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. It's the recommendation to increase student-teacher ratio to +1.
8 for, none against.
All right, we're going to take a short 10-minute break, and then we'll continue with the rest.
You see, it was in here. It was in here. Okay, 'cause we can't.
That's on.
I'd like to ask my fellow board members to return to their seats. All right, the meeting is back in session. All right, the next item on the list is an increase in principal salary to make it a more regional. Do you have any members from the audience to comment on that? Any members of the board? This is to increase their salaries to make it more competitive in the region. All right. The next item is decreasing the number of assistant principals to adjust to the staffing ratio. So any members of the public to comment on the decrease in the number of assistant principals? Okay, members of the board. Mr. Lashley.
Could I maybe ask staff to just explain this and you know, where, have we identified where the assistant principals would come from? Who would be moved? Is it just?
It would, yes, sir. It'd be, you have some high schools, because of rezoning, their enrollment would go down. So we have a high school itinerant that we'd close 2 half positions at the high school level, and we have a vacancy coming up at the high school level, so we'd save 1 there. The others would be itinerant positions at the elementary school level, where we've got schools that were right on the bubble in terms of getting a full or not getting one. And so we gave several of the smaller elementary schools half assistant principals in addition to the 1 they already had.
Okay, and the reason I ask, I have 1 elementary school that has a half now, and I'd actually hoped to get a whole, because it always boggled my mind how we could effectively use an individual half and half. And I have a pretty decent high school in Acadiana that's a pretty good size, and we do have an itinerant there. And it's my concern that may be a half that's lost. And as we all know, I spend a lot of time in my schools. I'm surprised they don't run me off. And I see what these people do, and I see the effect they have. And I know we have to make cuts tonight. I know the last vote we got applause. That might be the last applause we get tonight. And I know we have to make cuts, but this is something that does concern me, and I just wanted a little more clarification. Thank you.
All right. The next item is the proposed cut in the number of instructional strategists. I'll ask, I'm sure there are people in the audience who have comments. So if y'all want to start lining up at the podium, please. I know they're here. This is your opportunity to address the board on the proposed cuts. This is their opportunity. So, all right. Speak now or forever hold your peace on the instructional strategist. All right. If you can, I'm going to try to keep you to 2 to 3 minutes, please.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So this line item that you're talking about, cuts for instructional strategists, is this all instructional strategists? Is this 11 for the A and Bs? Is this?
It says
can I
instructional
just clarify?
strategist minus 11, change from 1 to 1 to 1 to 2 for A and B schools. That's the proposal.
Okay, so that is the one that
That's what we're
speaking about.
discussing now, yes.
Okay.
So we're going to 2 to 3 minutes, please.
I'll do my best. Mia Lemaire, principal, Leo Judice Elementary School. We are an A school. We have phenomenal instructional strategists, as do all schools. I know they all are going to come to bat for their people, but the impact that the instructional strategists have on our classrooms is it's a great impact. They are there day in and day out. Ours in particular does model lessons in our classrooms. She assists with teachers, with the instruction, works with our students with doing the NWA test. She's in charge of our LEAP tests that we do. You know, the duties that those instructional strategists do in the classroom, it's incredible. And each and every board member is welcome to come to our school, and I'm sure other schools, to see the exact thing that they do and walk a day in their shoes, because they truly, truly work very hard, and they impact the children, they impact the teachers. They do a job that is incredible there. And without them, all of those duties have to fall onto other people. So, you know, that is an area that many of us principals feel strongly about, that they should not be removed, even from the A and B schools, because our A and B schools right now are helping to carry our district, if I can just speak frankly, and we want to stay A and B schools, and we want everyone else to do. Just everyone's working very hard for the same goal, and removing them and having them share, it just won't be as effective. You know, it's having half of a person working, you know, they just can't do the same job that they're doing now. And we're a smaller school, so we already share. I have a fourth of a band director. You know, I have a half of this, a third of this, you know, different things like that. And so just, you know, that's another way that, you know, it's going to impact our children. And we feel that cutting positions have to be cut. We understand that. But they should be as far away from the classroom as possible in the beginning, because our children are all why we're here. That's the, you know, we're all doing this job for them. And so, truthfully, the cuts we shouldn't even be looking at the schools first. You know, it's not fair to the children. I mean, they are the ones that we're here for. And they are the reason all of us have a job, and all of us are in this room and in the schools. So we should be looking at other ways that are farther away from the classroom, farther away from the school building, farther away. And there are things that other positions in the district that we feel could be looked at as far as for eliminating instead, because of the fact that the instructional strategists already deliver professional development at our school level. And so, you know, there are certain things that we feel that they could be doing, and other positions that could be eliminated, so that they could stay and continue to have that impact, that positive impact that's helping our children on our schools.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and thank you very much for your comments. I just want to make a quick statement. You've heard and seen me talk about this topic for the past couple of years. The only thing that I'll request is, I hear it a lot. I hear it via email. I hear it on the phone, text message, Facebook. I heard it tonight a few times. Cut far away from the classroom. Mm-hmm. I'm not asking you to stand up here and tell me in public, but anytime I'm asking that if anyone says, we need you to cut farther away from the classroom, back it up with an email, a text message, catch me outside afterwards, and tell me specifically what to cut, because far away from the classroom is not working for us. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, and I don't want you to tell me right now. I'm not trying to get a public announcement, but I do want to know what you're referring to specifically, farther away from the classroom, because it doesn't matter how far we get, everybody's job is just as important as the next person's when you're talking to them, and when you're talking to their supervisor, and when you're talking to the person that they support, and the list goes on and on.
Sure.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, and when do you want to meet? I'm serious.
Well, actually, you could have sent it to me last week, last month. You can send it to me tomorrow. We can talk tonight, whatever you feel like.
Okay.
Mr. Hidalgo, that's one of my principals right there that probably should kick me out of her school. I'm there so often. In fact, that's the actual school I was referring to with the half of assistant principal. And poor thing, her office is in a closet. And I do know the instructional strategist there. And it's probably not our time to speak, but being Miss Lemare was up there, and we have a very good relationship. I'm not in favor of cutting instructional strategists at A and B schools, because I want to know, why should we penalize those schools that are excelling and continue to give resources. I think we lower the floor more than we raise the bar. And I'm going to pick on El Leo Judice because I love picking on them. They're a straight up A school. I went there today. I looked for the gifted program on campus. It doesn't exist. They're a school of choice. They're a very diverse campus. They take children through the lottery system. They can't pick and choose their students. And they're a solid A school. I have Ridge Elementary here. It's now a solid B school. I'm seeing growth in my district. I was elected to support our children. And I'm just kind of backing what Ms. Lemare is saying. I don't want to penalize our A and B schools while we I understand we have to support our C and D schools. I don't think we have any F schools anymore. I understand we have to support them. We need to support them. It's important we support them. But I don't think we ought to do it at the expense of those that are excelling. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I wasn't not agreeing with the young lady. And also, that sounds a whole lot like what another board member said at the last meeting.
All right, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, you have the floor, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Catherine Shakesnider. I'm going to be the instructional strategist at Southside. I've been with Lafayette Parish for a decade. The school I'm currently teaching at, when I began working in Lafayette Parish, we were a D school. We're now a B school. My daughter is a student at Myrtle Place Elementary. And both as a parent and an employee, and of course a future instructional strategist, I have a few things I want to point out about the job of an instructional strategist, is to make sure that data-driven prescriptive instruction is taking place in all of the classrooms. What prescriptive instruction is knowing what students are coming to us, what their weaknesses are, and addressing that on every campus. This is a full-time job. Splitting these positions creates gaps in the coaching process that is so integral to the achievement of these school letter grades. We do not want to be a parish in decline again, and so we should not remove or alter the programs that have been working for us. Improving instruction and on-site PD has allowed us to make great steps in these areas. Sharing an IS would put these schools at risk of decline. Every year we have teachers that are new to LPSS, new to teaching, are teaching in areas that are new to them. It is the IS on campus that makes sure effective quality instruction is happening in these classrooms. It is the IS that makes sure these teachers are continually improving their instruction, and therefore the school's SPS, which is vital to Dr. Aguilar's Vision 2020. To delegate the daily responsibility of an IS, even in part, to an admin is impossible. They also have full-time jobs and responsibilities. They are maxed out. A half-time IS can never work intensely with those teachers in most need. Instruction would take a hit, PD would take a hit, test scores would take a hit. All of these factors directly affect student learning. We didn't work hard to have AB schools just to dismantle the key factors which helped us achieve these goals. Now we have AB schools, we must protect the resources that have helped us achieve that. IS is key to making weak teachers into strong teachers, novice teachers into seasoned accomplished teachers, and great teachers into master teachers. Finally, testing probably needs to be addressed. The only campuses that have data directors anymore are the ones paying for them out of Title I. So not all schools have that. Testing often falls to the instructional strategist. We split instructional strategists between campuses. Testing, who does that fall to? Everyone else already has a full-time job. And then I wrote at the bottom, what am I forgetting? I don't know if I'm forgetting anything. I hope not. But as you can see, given what the instructional strategist job is, making sure effective instruction is going on in the classroom, it would be a real step backwards for those AB schools and allow them the risk of declining.
Good evening. My name is Felice Williams. I'm the principal at Evangeline Elementary School, and I hate speaking in public, but this is so important that I'm going to put my fear of public speaking aside and say that I'm a C school at Evangeline. We're about 4 points from being a B. And my strategist heard about this, and she said, if we become a B, I will have worked myself out of a job. And that's a shame because she works so hard. Over the spring break, she took 2 days out of her spring break to go to school to do all of the LEAP coding on all the booklets. I felt so bad. I went and met her one day and told her, don't come back again. But she did, because their job is so important to her. Our kids are so important to her. They sacrifice so much. There's no way that I can do all that she does. And while I did vote for the tax, and I regret that it did not pass, there is not a building, a brick, a pound of mortar that could ever do for my school what my strategist does. I am already drowning as a principal. There is no way. There is no way I can do my job as a principal if I don't have the strategist. And I don't think that you all fully understand what strategists do. For some reason, they've been looked at as admin. They are not. She is not a leader on my campus in terms of administration. She does instruction. If we don't have a strategist, I don't know how we're going to do fast forward. I don't know who will do RTI, who will schedule tutoring, progress monitoring, who will come to SBLC meetings every single week, who will do PLC meetings every single week, who will give up their summer, their spring break to do all the things that she does. I wish, I beg, I invite, I plead, please go to the schools that you represent and see what the strategist does. Every program that we have at our school, my strategist has her hand in it in some way, whether it's school improvement, AR, everything. I rely on her almost as much as my AP, but in a different way. Please don't think that is making it's another assistant principal, because that's not what she does. But what she does is invaluable, and I don't have 3 minutes, not just enough time to explain and give her due recognition for what she does. If you try to put those two schools together, an A and B school together, you might as well just say they're not going to get what they need. Imagine a school like J. Wallace James, who is a high-performing school, and then say Alamo. Those are two big, huge schools. That just will not work. It will not work. And I will be happy to email other suggestions of where the cuts could come from, because the strategist is not the right place.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Baudin. I'm the instructional strategist at Milton. Milton is a special campus because we are K-8. So most schools are elementary and middle, and they each have their own strategists. I cover K-8, and it has been an interesting position to be in. A little background, I was in the classroom for 10 years, and the day I stepped out of the classroom, I said, I'm going to do everything I can in whatever position I'm in to make the life and the job of the teachers easier, because I knew how hard it was being in the classroom. I left the classroom. I was a data analyst at Austin Elementary. I was a math coach for 2 years, and I became here at Milton. I left math coach because I felt like I wasn't able to make a true impact on a school. And I wanted to be back on a campus where I had a home to be able to work with the teachers and the children and really feel like I was able to make a difference. Austin, we were a D school. We became a C school while we were there. And it's not easy to grow a low-performing school, but you have a lot of strategies and stuff you can take into. When we're in A school, we still have to grow that A school. So we have to get really creative of where we're going to find the resources and really tap into the kids and their weaknesses to be able to get that school to grow. So cutting my position, and I hate saying it, my position, because the teachers were devastated when I told them that it was cutting it, because they know what we do and how hard we work. In my job every day when I get there is what can I do to make their jobs easier. And I do a lot for them, and we're doing PLCs. I'm sitting in SBLC meetings. I do PLCs with elementary one day, PLCs with middle school another day, and we are in and out of those classrooms and helping the teachers in any way that we can. And I think our position is very valuable, and I hope that y'all decide to keep us, because putting us between two schools, I've done that. I've been itinerant, and it's hard to do both on two campuses at one time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Guillory, the strategist at LJ Alamo. I'm not going to repeat all of the things that everyone else said, because I 100% agree. My concern is with the sharing. It's extremely inefficient to share someone like a strategist. You don't have time to build relationships. You don't have the immediacy if a teacher has a concern. Teachers text me all day long, I need this, I need that. They call me all night long and text me all night long. Tomorrow, can you help me with this or that? Because they know I'm there. If I'm going to be at another school or 2 other schools, that's very difficult to do. It's hard to build those relationships. It's hard for the teachers to have that immediate support that they need. Sharing is just absolutely not going to work.
Good evening. My name is John Mouton. I'm the principal at Broussard Middle School. When you think about cutting instructional strategists, and you think about cutting them at just the A and B schools, I think that is a path that can lead to much more harm than good. We look at that A and we look at that B and we think, oh wow, this school has really got it together, and they don't have children who may be in need of interventions. But when you look at more data in the schools, even an A school or a B school has a lot of children who are in need of specific help, specific services, specific interventions, and the strategist is key to helping with that. NWEA, the strategist helps with. RTI, reaching our children who need more help, reaching our lower children so that we can hopefully raise them up to continue to grow our schools. Our strategist helps with that. Going into classrooms and helping with various strategies, various forms of instruction to build our teachers, our strategist helps with that. Professional learning communities, our strategist helps with that. And I just want the board and everyone in the room to consider that this position was created because of a need. There was a need at every school for someone to handle all of the things that come along with trying to help children be better learners, trying to help teachers be better teachers, and trying to help schools raise their scores. So please consider that even though a school may have an A or a B, that there are still multiple students on those A and B campuses who need help. And I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said, but our strategists are central to helping those children who may be on an A or B campus but still need assistance. And one other thing, I'm a middle school, I'm a B middle school. We're proud of that B. We've worked hard for it. But my strategist helped us with testing. We had 5 weeks of testing. 5 weeks where my campus totally stopped. My routine stopped. Everything stopped. Had it not been for my strategist, who worked with teachers, who worked with testing coordinators, who worked with everyone to make sure things continue to run smoothly, I would have been in trouble. And I don't know any school who could have functioned with 5 weeks of testing and half a strategist. So please, please keep that in mind when you are considering this item. Thank you.
Once again, Ann Herman, Plantation Elementary School principal. I'm not going to say a whole lot because we had 3 principals here that spoke very well as to what the strategist's duties are. My strategist in particular works from 7 to 5 every day, and she does an awesome job with RTI, remediation, testing, everything else that the other principals did. That person cannot be split among 2 schools. Our goal is to be an A school. We just made A status this year, and it's because of the hard work of our strategists working with our teachers, working with our students. So I want you to please rethink the splitting of the strategists and assign 1 strategist to each school. Thank you.
Hi, Catherine Cassidy, principal of Southside High School. We all know that there's a shortage of administrators right now in the state, just generally across the country, there's a shortage. And so in order to attract good administrators, you have to have good resources for them. And so we need more administrators coming to our parish. We want top-notch administrators. We need to have solid resources in place for them. The instructional strategist is a critical piece and a critical it's essential to the school developing the way it should. And so for that reason, I think I would be very concerned that if you cut the instructional strategist, what this will do to the morale of the present administrators. And by cutting the instructional strategist, what do you do to continue to attract quality administrators without that additional resource? Leading a school has transformed tremendously over the course of this last several years. It is not what it used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's not the same. The demands on us and the demands leading a school are quantitatively different than what they once were just a few years back. I think that, one of the agenda items was to think about giving us administrators a pay raise. Giving me a $9,000 pay raise to become equal with our neighboring parishes and whatnot, that would not get more out of me. That would not make me work harder as an administrator. I work as hard as I can right now because it's what I do and what I'm passionate about. So paying me $9,000 more is not going to make me work harder. It would put us at the average, which is wonderful, and would also apply to attracting better administrators. But paying me more is not going to get more out of me in my output. The instructional strategist is a critical piece. You want to lead schools in the right direction. You need to attract quality administrators. And in order to attract quality administrators, you have to have the resources in place for those guys. This person is absolutely necessary to developing the teachers and to assisting the administrators in that professional development. They're essential. So by cutting this position, you're putting more work on the administrators in ways that we are not, we don't have the time because there's so many other demands that come with our job. So I warn you that by cutting these positions, what you do to the morale of the administrators and what it will do to attracting more quality administrators in the future.
Hi, Monique Diaz, principal of Woodvale Elementary, and I just want to reiterate what every single person said about the instructional strategist tonight, because I agree wholeheartedly with all of the comments, and especially with splitting the instructional strategist between A and B schools. We are also an A school at Woodvale, and we have 60% of economically disadvantaged students on our campus. Yes, we have the gifted program, but we have many students who have needs just as well as C and D schools. So by splitting the instructional strategists, it doesn't decrease the workload at all. And so I think that's going to be a very, just not a good decision for our students. And as everybody said tonight, those instructional strategists work directly with teachers, directly with students. They run PLCs with the administrators, SBLC meetings week after week. Model lessons, testing, just the numerous things that instructional strategists do on the campus is immeasurable. So, thank you.
All right, members of the board. Mr. Knezik.
Dr. Aguilar, I have a series of questions, and Mr. Guidry, it may take a second for you to research some of them. And it is related. So we receive Title II money, and we currently use that Title II money to pay for what?
Content coaches.
How many?
Content coaches.
Yeah, how many?
15.
15 content coaches.
Mm-hmm. Is she here?
My second question is, what year did we establish instructional strategists? Do we know? 2012.
2013 is when they went district-wide. Prior to that, it was individual schools, Title I funds.
And what did we do? Who had those responsibilities of an instructional strategist before we had instructional strategists?
Some of it was curriculum coordinators. Some of them were Title I funded positions. Some of the responsibility belonged with assistant principals and principals, and they did the best they could.
All right. So I guess the $1 million question, the $880,000 question, Dr. Aguilar, is when given the challenge of cutting $7.5 million from the budget, this is one of your recommendations to the board. So my question for you, sir, is if we are not going to cut the $880,000 here, where else are you going to cut it? Because as I've heard tonight from many people, there is the perception that there is a golden pot of money in this building.
Absolutely. I was hoping you were going to ask that question.
Yes, sir. So,
well, I do have a solution for the instructional strategist, and I want to be clear that my recommendation to the board earlier today was not to cut any instructional strategists. However, the reality is that we are trying to reduce our operating expenses. So as it turns out that there are only 17 A and B schools, according to Ms. Samick. So it translates into not cutting 11 instructional strategists, but roughly 8.5. Let's round that to 9 or 8, if you would prefer. I would offer to you, members of the board, that there's no doubt instructional strategists are valuable, crucial to the success of the schools. You just added 9.5 teachers back to the teacher allocation. That was a +1 recommendation. It saved $636,000, which is roughly the value of those 8 strategists. Spreading 9.5 teachers across all 42 campuses does not overload any school or classroom in the district. It's barely noticeable. I would offer to you that you allow the +1, the 9.5 teachers, to substitute for the instructional strategist. That would be my recommendation.
So Dr. Aguilar, am I to understand that the cost, if we did the A and B schools for instructional strategists, is no longer $880,000, but rather $550,000? Oh yeah, 640. That's right. I was thinking it was 7. I was rounding down to 7. All right. Is that right? $640,000?
Roughly, yes.
Okay. So just for point of reference, we're $570,495 to the bad so far this evening, meaning we have added $570,000 of expenses since we walked in here. So if we chose to take the superintendent's recommendation, we would be back. We'd actually be $4,000.
I would say we need to keep in mind that I had suggested some other changes, although dramatic changes, some other changes earlier tonight.
Well, so I'd like to ask Ms. Harmon, since she spoke on both of those items. I mean, and I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot, but you spoke very passionately about us not doing the +1, those 9.5 teachers for the student ratio. And now Dr. Aguilar is suggesting that we keep the instructional strategist, which you also spoke passionately about, but go ahead and go up to the +1. It's the 9.5 teachers that would have decreased system-wide if we did the increase to +1. So.
So what you're asking me is to choose between my instructional strategist and my students. I'm not going to do that.
So, well, but that's what we're being asked to do, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, if we're talking about,
we're talking
10 instructional strategists, and they're about $80,000 each, so about $40,000 per A and B school. So, where would you cut $40,000 from your?
I would have to look at the budget more carefully to make some decisions on that.
Right.
But we're looking at, you add more to the classroom, and then keep an instructional strategist. I just don't see it. I'm sorry, I can't choose.
So, I mean, it's a
we're
difficult decision.
about, as a principal, I'm about providing everything I need for my students, so I can't make a choice on that. Thank you. Sorry.
Madam President, may I interrupt very briefly?
Sure.
Very briefly. And Ms. Herman, I love you dearly, but I just want to say that that's exactly times 10 how we feel through this budget process. Just want you to know that. Thank you.
Mr. Lashley.
I think what we're trying to explain is the +1 will only affect 9 teaching positions over the whole district. That's not going to reduce anybody's class size by much. It's only 9.5 teaching positions that we voted to put back in. That's all it is. So reversing that vote and keeping the instructional strategist, to me, is a bigger win for the schools than nine teaching positions over 42 schools. That's not gonna, it's only, if you look at it on I don't know if they can put it up, it's only 9 teaching positions that were the +1. It was only $600 and something thousand. I would reverse it and keep the strategists in my A and B schools. If I had we're gonna have to cut. That's the reality of what we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to make cuts. We're gonna have to give and we're gonna have to take. I don't think these 9.5 positions, there's no one in them right now, correct?
There would be
right. Nobody loses their job on the 9. The +1 was only 9 positions.
Mr. Lachele.
Yes.
The +1's only 9 positions. When you add all that extra stuff that's been added in there, the end result, if we reverse what we just voted on, is every classroom gets another student. I'm not going to be able to support that. We can find it somewhere else, but I'm not going to support that. The 9 positions includes all the, Justin's the actuary here. I'm not, but it includes all those extra, numbers. You're not going to cut 9 positions and add a student in every classroom. We proved that 2 years ago that it's about 50 or 60 teaching positions when you add +1.
Right.
So when you fudge all the numbers together to come up with this 9.5 positions, the end result is 1 student per classroom. And come on, we're going to go back to that.
It's only $600,000.
That's the whole problem. That's the main reason I wanted to pull it, because if it would have been the 4-point-something million as it was in 2015, then we would have been talking a little bit more about, hey, look, this is a tough decision. That is not a tough decision. It's an easy decision to say, I'm not going to support putting +1 to save $600,000 in the district.
Fellow board members, I'm going to recommend that we just leave it as is, because this isn't the final vote. And
Right,
then,
we're not taking action on this tonight.
And then next week, when we come back with the ability to talk about some of the other cuts, maybe we will have a little bit more financial freedom to put things back in.
All right. Did someone else in the audience have any comments before I move on? Mr. Bouton? Sorry, you have to go to the mic. We're on TV. We stream live.
Okay, one other thing. We talked about the +1 in 2015, and we talked about rezoning. I was a school that dealt with +1 and rezoning in 2015. And because of my block classes and how some things ended up, the ratio was supposed to be 29-1. I had some classes with 36, 37-1. And when asked for assistance, I was told no. And I even went so far as to say, well, don't give me a teacher, just give me an aide. And I was told no again. I had a sub aide come in. So even though it says +1 with the ratio, please don't think that all of the classes are maxed out at 29-1. Some of those classes are maxed out at 33-1. And with that +1, even though we're saying on paper +1, it's not always just one more student. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knesset.
And Dr. Aguilar, I think if there's a situation where that exists, the board would be very happy to be aware of it.
Absolutely, and we have appeal slots that are guaranteed. Principals just need to notify me if that situation exists. I would say that to any principal. If you're not getting the help that you need, then contact my office. And I was a high school principal and a high school assistant principal. There are classes that are larger than other classes on campuses. It's just the nature of the master schedule and the type of subject being taught. So it's not 100% guarantee that if the pupil-teacher ratio is 28-1, that all classes have 28 students. It's an average based on the enrollment of the school divided by the number of teachers necessary. Band instructors, physical education instructors are going to have larger classes. Specialty classes are going to be smaller, but the net effect is the formula that you use to allocate teachers.
And as Mr. Mouton suggested, the rezoning also has an effect. For example, there are some schools that just don't have any more capacity to put another classroom of students. So what do when the students keep moving into the zone? They keep getting put in the classroom, and now you're 30-1 before you know it. So we can address it through rezoning, but we can't rezone every 6 months or every year.
Absolutely not.
So,
and Mr. Hidalgo, you know that we cannot just move a temporary building onto a campus and provide relief. It's a minimum of 10 weeks before that building can be occupied by students. This is going to be an interesting August with rezoning and transportation rerouting and trying to staff based on our predicted student population. This could be a hit or a miss, and we could miss widely on this August opening of school. So we have to understand that. The staff understands that we're budgeting, we're staffing generously right now to anticipate the unexpected growth in some areas. So that's why the 9.5 teachers line item comes about. We were staffing generously to protect ourselves and you and the students and the district.
All right, moving on. The next item is to add Leader in Me to an additional 22 schools. Any questions or comments from the audience or the board? Dr. Chasson?
Would y'all happen to know which schools we're going to add those to? Because I'm not in favor of that.
Actually,
It's the existing Leader in Me schools.
It's the existing ones?
There are 22 schools through a very generous grant recently provided to United Way of Acadiana. The cost per school is about $6,500. Our share is greatly reduced down to $3,000 per school, hence the $66,000 expenditure. This sum of money had been paid by schools, paid by individual schools for Leader in Me. In fact, they were raising money to pay the full $6,500 cost, but because of the reduced cost, I felt like the district is getting quite a bit of use out of Leader in Me. It's very valuable. It's important that the district commit some funds to Leader in Me.
Okay, let me ask this. did we kind of circumvent the process and halt the fundraising process? Because if they could simply, if every individual school could simply reach out to members in their community and get the $3,000, this would save us $66,000.
We didn't send a message out to the schools about halting fundraising.
Okay. So are the schools still trying to raise the $6,500?
Well, we're heading into the summer. They haven't yet begun thinking about next year just yet.
Okay.
If I may, United Way did secure a large grant, and Franklin Covey decided or made a change in how they were assessing the schools for their annual renewal of licenses. And the lowest level for next year is $7,500 per school. That's the lowest level.
Okay.
And United Way is able to pay a generous part of that, except for the $3,000 that they're asking us to commit. And so I just wanted to clarify that is a reoccurring annual fee that should be coming up.
Okay. So our cost would be $66,000 every year in the perpetuity, technically speaking?
Well, unless we add additional Leader in Me schools, in which case it would increase, or unless the grant monies run out, and then we'd have to make a decision at the district level.
Okay. I'm going to hold off for now, but I am going to come back for this.
All right, the next item is furniture at Thibodeau STEM, and it looks like it's a transfer from one fund to another, not an increase or decrease. So any comments from anyone on that? All right, the next item is the proposal to cut 5 high school librarians. Members of the audience? And Dr. Aguilar, is it correct that you made this proposition because we're over the ratio for the librarians currently?
That's correct, yes.
Good evening. My name is Kay Victorian. I am the library science specialist for the district. I am a former elementary principal and a former high school librarian. What you are being handed currently are the guidelines from the state concerning library library media centers. And if you look at the page, I have had it open for you. Those are the recommendations of how every library should be staffed. Currently, most of our libraries are not even staffed at this recommendation, no matter if you look at elementary, middle, or high school. As a matter of fact, you are asking to cut 5 high school librarians. If you look at Bulletin 741, for our principals, you will notice in that, which I didn't hand you because I didn't have a copy of that in my hands when I left the office. Every high school library over 1,000 is required to have 2 librarians. We are asking to cut 5. All 5 of those are required. One of them should be shifted from one high school to the other, but all of our high school libraries are staffed at the required amount. So to move on from there, and we are not to that item, but while I'm here, that leads into when you talk about clerks. This also gives you the information for clerks. So I will not come back for clerks, but please notice that all of those elementaries should have a library clerk as well. When you cut a clerk, as a principal, the clerk is probably going to be the librarian. It's just something to think about. We currently in our district have a requirement of 1 elementary and middle librarian for anyone above 250. We have a requirement of 2 per 1,000, and that is where we are staffed. So I just beg you to consider that when you talk about libraries, they support every area of the curriculum. They don't just hand out books. They do so much more for all of our children. We just had almost 1,000 children from elementary all through high school that read more than 1 million words. Every word you read makes you better in every subject. You just heard all about those SPS scores, how we want to see academic growth. How can you take someone who sees every single child in that school away from them? The cuts that you are making affect children directly, and I know you're tired of hearing that, and I hate to follow the strategist, but it's true. Our librarians touch every child, and without them, you lose that support for literacy, and without literacy, you lose the support for learning. So please seriously consider what you're doing when you think of cutting high school librarians.
Hi, my name is Jade Colley, and I am one of the librarians at Acadiana High School. I'm nearsighted, which means that I could see clearly close up, but when it comes to seeing far away, I have some difficulty. Sight is essential. So it's that very reason that I stand in support of our parish's Vision 2020. It's a perfect vision. Vision 2020 is built around 4 fundamental commitments. 2 of these are as follows. All students enter 9th grade proficient in ELA and math. All high school graduates are college and career ready. Librarians are essential to the achievement of both of these commitments. Literacy is foundational to every content area. Sadly, every student doesn't enter 9th grade proficient in ELA. Our test scores prove this. As a result, schools need someone who will move beyond the curriculum and entice students to read books. High school librarians do just that. All school libraries across the district circulate 10 to 20,000 materials a year, including books, ebooks, and various technologies. Not only do we service students during school hours, but we open our doors before school, after school, and on weekends occasionally. For Lafayette High, this meant that their 2 librarians have serviced students 31,577 times between the 2 of them this school year, according to their data collected. And I hate to do Sean Spicer, but Ms. Blanco from Lafayette High School has the data here if anyone would like to see it. Moreover, a part of school's accountability to determine if students are college and career ready is through test scores. Librarians impact test scores as well as school performance scores. The English, biology, and American history end-of-course tests feature research sections and questions based on primary and secondary sources. This is taught primarily by school librarians as we are credentialed to teach information literacy skills. At Acadiana High, this has resulted in us teaching and co-teaching over 35 different classes, totaling approximately 1,050 students, and this is beyond our library orientation. We all teach these classes and serve students while promoting a love of reading through programs such as Million Word Achievers, through creating and running library lunchtime programs and running after-school clubs. Furthermore, we service adults on campus. We pull materials that supplement the curriculum. We manage textbooks on campus. We are our school's technology coaches, and we serve on a multitude of other committees. We do this without a clerk. Lafayette High School does this understaffed, as the state's recommended staffing guidelines is 3 librarians and 1 clerk for enrollment of 1,750 to 1,999 students, and the rest of us do it without a clerk. If 1 librarian is cut, this will definitely impact the effectiveness of library programs. We would not be able to run a library, promote reading, and check in and check out books while also teaching necessary skills that help students become proficient in ELA and help them to become college and career ready. And we've seen the impact that this can have on society. We have adults who can't distinguish between real news and fake news, and this is a danger. I understand that we have to be fiscally responsible, but I urge you, please, don't be nearsighted during this time. We have to see what's going on now, but be able to see further ahead down the road. 2 librarians within the high schools is most effective. It is 2020 vision.
My name is Amanda Blanco, and I'm one of the 2 librarians at Lafayette High. As Jade just finished saying, we are understaffed. This stack of papers right here is our sign-in data from our system. We have our students sign in daily using a Google form. They scan their IDs when they enter the library. This does not include the students that we teach in full classes, the students that come in for library programs, such as the one we're having tomorrow with the public librarians. This does not include the number of students that come in to use the computer lab in the library. This is individual students that come in on their own. 31,577 students signed in to the Lafayette High Library this school year. These numbers are not accurate, by the way. We didn't start this system until mid-September. And the internet goes down. All those days the internet's down, students did not sign in. And of course, high schoolers are sneaky, and so they don't want to sign in, so we miss a lot of them that way too. So the number that you just heard is actually less than the number of students we actually service during the school year. One person cannot possibly help that many students. We struggle to do it with two. Please keep that in mind whenever you're considering cutting high school librarians. Thank you.
All right, any members of the board? Ms.
Yes.
Morrison?
I just wanted to say overall, I'm sitting here thinking that you are all so valuable to us and what you guys do every day. And don't ever think for a moment that you're not. It comes to times when we have to make some tough decisions. But not for 1 minute, please don't think that you are not valuable, because you are. You're the reason why we're the district we are today. You're the reasons why we're a B school and we're moving forward. And it's unfortunate we have to do what we're doing. And we don't want to do this, not at all. But just keep in mind this tremendous challenge that we have, and know that you are valuable, very valuable, beyond words. Thank you.
Mr. Broussard.
Dr. Aguilar, by cutting these librarians, will we still be in compliance with state law as far as the amount they're supposed to be compared to the student we have enrolled?
Mr. Broussard, so in looking at the Bulletin 741 and looking at the numbers that Ms. Victorian provided, I'd like you to pull this item and then let us study it a little bit longer.
All right, we're not going to take action on it tonight, so you can do that, I think, without us formally pulling it. All right, I'm going to call up the next three if there's anyone here to talk. I know there's some social workers here. The risk interventionist from the high schools, and the curriculum coordinator from J. Wallace James. If any of you have comments to make on any of those proposed cuts, head on up. Social workers, risk interventionist, and the curriculum coordinator at J.W. Falk. Just let us know what class of employee you are.
You gonna go?
Hey, Steve Frugier, Supervisor of Child Welfare and Attendance, and I'm just up to support my social workers. Just give a few little statistics about some things about what is going on and reason why we want to continue having the social workers. 3 years ago, we had social worker per school. We had about 42 social workers. 2 years ago, they were cut to 18 and down to 16. And now we're talking about reducing them to 10, 6 more. From the time we're talking about 3 years ago, the behavior issues were causing a lot of problems on campuses, and we had a large increase of recommended expulsion. Since we started with the social workers, it started to reduce those numbers, and we saw that the numbers were declining tremendously because with their support and all the things that they were doing to help with, some mental health issues that are out there, and also to provide behavior intervention program with some of the students that are 504 and SPED. And with with the help with those social workers, it really decreased the number of expulsion hearings. And if we can continue to decrease the numbers, and then our expulsion hearings will increase. As of today, we have 1,475 expulsion hearings that we have had, and with their support, and there's some other things, and they're going to discuss some of the things that they do on a daily basis. But I just wanted to give you those little statistics about some things for their support that they're giving, child welfare and attendance in the school system. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Juneau, and I'm a school social worker. At this time, I'm assigned to Karen Crowe High School, Lafayette Middle School, and Plantation Elementary School. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I am representing the group of us. We all kind of couldn't be here tonight, but we did want to rally with each other because we are a pretty committed group to kids. And there are, like Mr. Frugia said, 16 of us, which isn't very many when you consider that there are 42 schools. 3 of those social workers are assigned to schools as individuals. So we have 2 at MP Moss and 1 at Alice Boucher. So if you take those out of the mix, you're looking at 13 social workers for 40 schools, which we're spread pretty thin. And on a day-to-day basis, some of the things that we're responsible for in particular are federally mandated programs. So you have IEP services that are federally mandated that we have to provide for those special education students. Now we have an abundance of 504 students. As you may know, our numbers are rising, and now we're starting to have IAP dictated services that social workers provide tier 3 level interventions for. And with the onset of RTI that kind of came along, it's been over the course of the last, 8 to 10 years, we've really seen a growth in, what the state wants us to do with RTI, which comes down from the federal government. We have in our district utilized social workers to provide those RTI mandated services for the level of tier 3. So that's not even talking about mental health services. Those are just behavioral interventions that are dictated by federal and state mandates. On top of that, we serve to be on campuses when we can. We're spread very thin as it is right now, and we are there to help with crises that come up. I don't have the data on me because we kind of threw this together, but we have had an increase in suicides and suicidal attempts, a lot of suicidal ideation, an increase in bullying, a lot of problems with social media that that are causing problems, and we become involved with all those situations. Not to mention the drug and alcohol crisis that our students are in. So. We do provide those services, and already, I know there's been a lot of discussion about curriculum, and that's all very important, and it kind of makes us go, well, are we that important? But what I do know is that some of the students that are in the classroom could not be in that classroom if they didn't have our services. If a classroom doesn't have the management and the children that are ready to learn, then they're not going to learn, and we try to assist with that in the classroom. I've been in this district for 15 years, and I've watched over time what has happened to our group. Not only has it decreased in number, we have forfeited our 13th check. We have forfeited, I know this sounds silly, but our cell phone reimbursement. We have offices with no phones, so the only phone we have is our cell phone, and we pay for it ourselves. We've gone through cuts year after year after year until now we're down to 16, looking at down to 10, and trying to think of everything else. One thing I do want to add is that if we are cut, in situations, and I'm never afraid to work. I don't care if I have to plunge a toilet or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. But there isn't anybody that can replace us. We are licensed, and we're licensed clinical social workers, and with that certification and that license, there's not anybody else that can provide the related services that we provide. So if we're cut and we have to be spread even thinner to not be able to be at our schools, there's not somebody that can pick up our slack. So there's only one group of people that's going to suffer the most, and that's the kids. And we love the kids, and we don't want them to suffer. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Trahan, and I'm a school social worker. I am currently providing services to students at Evangeline Elementary, Karen Crowe Heights Elementary, and Truman Early Development Center. Catherine shared a lot of the things that we do, a lot of our responsibilities and duties. And it can be overwhelming to hear all of that, but to walk in our shoes in a day can be a difficult concept to grasp, as we may be assisting with a crisis in a classroom that may be difficult for the teacher to handle due to the nature of what that child is dealing with. That's one thing we have to keep in mind. There may be a hearing that we are at, but then we're called to help with a crisis here. And then there's another student wondering if you're coming to get them because they're used to seeing you every week. And that's one thing they grasp onto. And they see you in the hallway. Are you coming? Are you going to see me? As I left school today, and the little girl looked at me and said, are you going to be there to help me tomorrow? And I couldn't tell her yes, but I could tell her she was going to do a good job. You know, we are spread thin because we are at 3 and 4 different schools. To be able to build that relationship with these kids and for them to have trust in us, to be able to know that there is someone that they can go to when they've run away from home the night before and then they're brought to school the next day. They have to be able to grasp the information they're taught and the instruction material. You know, as the teacher says, okay, go to the counselor, that kid knows they regularly see the social worker and they have a social worker they can go to. Well, in the hallway, I was helping a kid that was running from the class, but I saw this kid at my door crying. There are so many different places in a school that we are needed, and there are kids and principals and teachers looking for us. Social workers are truly essential to these schools and to these students. We have a roster of SPED students, as Catherine mentioned, that we are legally mandated to provide services to. And this is the only place they have someone to be able to talk to in that way. Some of these kids have parents that are not consistently taking them to receive this help. But they know that they're going to see me at least twice a month. And they're begging, these kids are begging for more. But we have to, as we're spread so thin, look at what we have. Some of these kids that are waiting and parents are hoping that their child will get be referred for a pupil appraisal evaluation in hopes of getting some of those services, whether they be academic and behavioral. In order to get that, they need that, some of these kids need that Tier 3 service where they have FBAs and behavior plans where we are an integral part in completing. They need that data to substantiate a need for these services in these IEPs. So we are the ones backing that and helping to make that possible. So I encourage you to look carefully at that and think about what these kids need in order to grasp the instruction material that they are being taught. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Shannon Johnson, and I'm the social worker at Lafayette High, Lafayette Middle, S.J. Montgomery, and Myrtle Place Elementary. When I started this position 5 years ago, I was previously a school teacher years ago. But when I started this position 5 years ago, I had Lafayette High, which was cumbersome in and of itself. And then every year with the cuts, I got added a school and added a school and added a school. And I'm proud to say that myself and my co-workers, we have rose to the occasion. We are handling our business. However, shaving us any more thin is really going to make an impact on the services that we provide and those that we are mandated to provide. We are an integral part of providing behavior tier 3 services for special ed evaluations. They need that progress monitoring to be able to complete the evaluation. We participate in expulsion hearings because we see those children for services, and they rely on our information, and we're mandated to see those kids in tier 3. And then, of course, as my coworkers explained, the special ed students that we are required by law to see. So we just ask that you consider that. We have been up here every year since I'm here, and we've been dwindled down, and we just ask that you please consider keeping it not too much thinner than it is, so that we can provide the services and care for the children as we do. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go through some other classifications with proposed cuts. So if anyone's here to speak on these, the technology technician, central office secretaries, academy paraeducators, custodians, or clerical assistants. So if anyone's here to speak on any of those proposed cuts.
Hello, I'm Erin Kazar, the librarian at Milton Elementary Middle School. I am one librarian servicing or trying to service pre-K through 8th grade with a 969 enrollment. My clerk,
ma'am,
I'm speaking on clerks, yes.
Thank you.
My clerk makes it possible for my library doors to stay open during lessons. My doors are open for all students while I'm teaching lessons because my clerk is available to help them. My doors would have to close during library lessons if I lose my clerk. Closing the doors of a library is like closing the door on a child's progress and a child's potential. The services we provide are essential to students' academic growth. Losing a clerk will limit how much I can impact my pre-K through 8th grade population. And I'm speaking now because I do believe that most administrators will look at the library clerk if they are given a choice between office clerks and library clerks. Many of the middle school and elementary school library clerks make it possible for us to have a day full of classes while also still servicing students in an open access setting. And at Milton especially, this is important because my day is full of elementary, pre-K through 4th grade classes. 5th through 8th grade only can do open access. So if my doors had to close, most of my population will be affected. Thank you.
I said I wasn't going to speak, but I've been implored to let you know that the district guidelines on clerks specifically give numbers for clerks per elementary school, per middle school, and per high school, by population. It does say specifically in the LPSS staffing guidelines that elementary schools must have a clerk assigned full-time to the library. What happens with this is that often, though they should be and are said to be for the library, if there is a choice between supporting an office and supporting the library, they will be pulled. You heard how important the second librarian is. In elementary, you don't have a second librarian, even though it is recommended, though not required by the state, that after certain numbers, they have a second librarian also in elementary. I gave you that information. So we want to make clear that there is a huge concern by cutting a clerk that you will actually be impacting libraries and not offices, because library and office clerks are one and the same position. And I don't know if that was clear. So I needed to make sure that it was understood that library clerks and office clerks are considered the same position and move interchangeably back and forth. When Lafayette High presented the number of students that they see, when you look at circulation numbers, J. Wallace James Elementary has circulated at this point in the year 72,732 books. Who has time to teach every single class in an your population? 900 children. She teaches every grade. She teaches a class. Every week they go to library. How can she teach that class if she has no clerk that's going to help shelve those books, as well as Ms. Kozar said, and have open access for them to interchange those books? And so that's why I needed to make it clear, as much as the second high school librarian is important, that clerk does that kind of job to support that other librarian who teaches a class, because every librarian is a certified teacher first.
Good evening. My name is Susan Kincaid, and I'm the clerk at Carencro High School in the counseling department. As a brand new clerk to Carencro High, I left pre-K and went to high school. Very large learning curve, if you can imagine, but work with 4 counselors who are constantly busy from the time they get there in the morning, and I leave them every day in their offices. Our counselors work day in, day out, morning, night. There are a lot of days when they never get their to-do list done because there's a crisis. There's a kid that needs them. There is a teacher that needs assistance. Our counselors, as well as all of our other staff, are paper thin with everything that needs to go on. There are days where we don't eat lunch. There are days when we come in, I go in at 6:15 in the morning, and there are days like today where I stayed at school till 4 o'clock. It's what needs to be done. We're not asking for anything major except to stay in there and do our jobs and do what needs to be done for our children. No man can serve 2 masters. We have to decide whether we want to be a district that is about children or about what we look like. And I'm sorry, I only make $20,000 a year. Okay? But my salary is better served by those children. I have 2 children that were brought up in this system. We lost one of my children in this system. So I'm passionate about making sure our children do not fall through the cracks, because mine was one. And I am heart-sickened that we want to take a $20,000 job or a $12,000 job for a brand new clerical assistant, and we want to take as many of those people away as we can, but we will not sacrifice one administrative job that could save 5 or 6 clerical assistant or custodian jobs. Those custodians work like dogs when children throw stuff all over campuses and all over walls and all over bathrooms that they have to continually clean up. And not one custodian on my campus has ever had a horrible word to say. It's always good morning, good afternoon, how can I help you? So we're going to slap them in their face along with our children? I'm sorry, guys. This isn't rocket science, and we're not brain surgeons here. Okay? We need to service our children. I've put in 20 years into this system. And what I have to show for it are the children that hugged me when they left my school as seniors, saying, "Thank you for caring about me."
Madam President, Jonathan Cole. LPAE represents clerical professionals, and they are our professionals. We also represent custodial professionals. Everyone is a professional. that works with our students. There's some issues with some of the numbers with as far as when we look at a personnel situation, and I'm not envious of Ms. Thibodeau, but when you have an elementary school where there's one cleric available and that clerical is not available and there's no substitute, we lose personnel staff. The formula is problematic, particularly at elementary level. When you move to the secondary level, we have bookkeeping assistants that assist with our bookkeepers, which are dealing with some serious auditing issues moving forward as we try to get a handle on some of these school records and things with our financial house, getting that in order. I spoke with a custodian today at my site, Lafayette High, and she was telling me that they currently have 9 custodians to service the largest high school in the state. And come summertime, that number will be reduced to 7 through attrition. They don't expect to get any additional persons to fill those positions, and they don't expect that number to stay where it is. They'll make do with what they have. But, part of the issue that we've been dealing with is this idea that our school sites, the appearance of our school sites, and these professionals handle that, and that gives us the perception and reality of what Lafayette High is like and what are the condition of our schools. And so as a board, you are making an attempt to repair and fix and upgrade buildings and things like that. But at the same time, we're undercutting the very people that handle those processes on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this meeting up in the next few minutes. It's scheduled to roll over to next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I know there's still many people here, so if there's anyone who came to speak on any of the proposed cuts who has not had an opportunity yet, not on something we've already called up because we've gone past those, but if I did not call the item that you came tonight to speak on, please come and talk now. All right. Fellow board members. Oh, Kyle? Mr. Bordelon?
Yes, sir. I'll be at the next meeting, but could I be allowed to make a comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Board.
Kyle Bordelon, Director of Planning and Facilities.
Okay.
I wanted to make a comment about the proposed reduction on custodians. These custodians work very hard for us. By cut, and as you all know, they don't get paid a whole lot of money. By cutting one custodian at these campuses, you're going to increase their workload. You're not going to increase their pay. We have a tough time already finding qualified people to serve as custodians on our campuses. So I'd ask that you please consider not cutting custodians in the school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bordelon. Just let us know what item you're speaking on, ma'am.
Career Center, the Career Center.
Okay.
My name is Tammy Marcel. I absolutely cannot believe that I'm up here speaking on behalf of career and technical education. Career and technical education is at the heart of our local economy. The majority of jobs in Lafayette Parish are dependent on a certified, qualified, well-trained workforce. The purpose of a centralized Career Center site is to offer all students who desire the opportunity to earn industry-based certification in a career and technical area. All CTE areas cannot be placed at each of the 5 high schools. By closing the Career Center, you will be denying students who want to pursue a specific CTE area the right to pursue the career of their choice. The question has been raised about the numbers being down at the Career Center. The numbers didn't just drop for no reason. We have lost half of our programs this school year, including carpentry, health professions is being moved, outdoor power equipment, drafting, T2 safety, oil and gas. These are programs in which students can earn high-paying jobs. Our #1 program for over 30 years, with 125 students, is slated to be moved from our site. That's a total of 290 missing students. We have no idea why these programs were completely shut down so abruptly, but we do know that closing them is the major reason that our numbers are down. How will closing the Career Center save millions of dollars if you have to move these programs? You will still need to pay these teachers that you move, and rebuild shops and labs that are already in existence. Some of the teachers have a few questions that they would like for you all to consider also when making this decision that will directly impact our students. What happens to the students who are enrolled in courses that are only taught at the Career Center? Courses such as Auto Tech, Pro Start, and Cosmetology. Will they have to change their Jump Start pathway? How will they earn their Jump Start credential if they didn't earn it this year? We also have the Exim Pathways program. In order for the Exim Pathways students to earn a state-approved skill certificate, they are required by the state to be enrolled in a career program for 2 years. How will those students be able to take their second-year career course? Our major concern at the Career Center is educating students. Our mission is to allow students to come to us from the high schools, earn that certification, and either go directly into the workforce or to pursue higher education. I'm not sure if you all understand what we do at the Career Center and what we've experienced this year that has impacted where we are. I implore the board members to look at the Career Center, what we do, and find ways to support us for the future. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the audience? All right, board members? And the items we haven't reached yet will come up again next week, so we'll have more opportunity to ask staff questions. But Mr. Hidalgo?
Yeah, I was going to ask you for allow me a few closing remarks, and I think it's perfect time. And I think the last speaker led right into the ideas of the remarks I wanted to make. I think that in on some level there's a misconception of what's happening here. We're not necessarily saying let's do more with less. I already know that's impossible personally. We are cutting services that this school system offers. Now, everybody's going to come up and talk about how their service is just as important as the other, and I respect that. And that's why I have a problem with the process we use, because every year it's an emotional process. And it's not about the budget, it's about someone's job, and that is difficult. It has to be. I'm glad I'm not in that position. But we have to decide, if we're going to make cuts, what services we're no longer going to provide. And it's not to stop anyone from coming up and speak. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying every year we make decisions based on emotion that takes place right here at this podium. And anyone who's about to lose their job, I would imagine, or could potentially lose their job, it's going to be emotional. We also hear cut farther away from the classroom. Well, where's the list of the essentials? The teacher's the first essential in the classroom, right? And then where does it go from there? Is it the principal or is it the cafeteria because we have to feed the kids? Is it, what are the essentials? Where do these people fall into place? The superintendent has done in my opinion, a fantastic job at bringing back recommendations based on a number that we provided him. And then now we have to listen to, we're hearing from the folks who are going to be impacted. Students will be impacted, and we're hearing from the folks who do that job every day. And we heard how every job was just as important as the other one. That's what I heard tonight. So I'm hoping not to eliminate folks from being able to come speak, but we have to find a way to refine the process to address, we are cutting. So if we are cutting the Career Center, it doesn't mean that we're going to rebuild the Auto Center at another school. It means we are no longer going to offer that program. Correct? So that's what cutting a program means, that it's not going to be offered anymore. If we're cutting a certain position, and I'm not going to pick on any one, but that means that service will no longer be offered. Now, is it right or wrong? Well, we have been charged with everything we've been charged with: balancing the budget, fixing facilities, educating children, the whole 9 yards. And everyone's an expert in every field, but we have to make the decision. So I'm hoping we can refine this process to make sure that we are making cuts based on the superintendent's recommendations, which I think he's done a fantastic job with. Thank you.
Mr. Broussard.
I know it's closing remarks, but you hit the nail on the head when you say we are potentially cutting services. It's always difficult to sit here and make a decision whether a person loses their ability to put food on the table versus brick and mortar. That's a difficult job. But the key thing is cutting services that we should be offering to our students and our staff to make better decisions in life. And we are given a task to do so. So when we make the decision, make sure that we are cutting services, and that's very important.
I wanted to quickly echo Mr. Hidalgo's sentiments. Him and I were just sitting right there, and as we're talking back and forth, I'm personally, I think out of everybody right here, I think I'm a little, we call that where I'm from, a little deeper in the game when it comes to sitting down and listening to various people get up and speak on the microphone. I agree with Mr. Hidalgo. We're going to have to find a better way for us to go about this. And him and I just finished talking about it. There's got to be a ranking of priorities and what's most important. And it's the most gut-wrenching thing. I walked out 2 or 3 times because it bothers me. I talked to folks out there. I talked to folks on the way out. It's the worst thing to have to go through. And with that being said, it has to be, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? It has to be above board. No, that's not the word. It can't be. We have to find a way as a board, as staff as well, to take, if possible, and I know it's almost impossible, to take the emotion out of it, and it's almost impossible. But we have to, because I've seen lines of people far longer than what we've seen tonight get up and even rap outside the building. Rap outside the boardroom, to explain to us how important that particular job is, and everybody's job is just as important. So if in the future, because listen, if I have to look at it strictly from a budget and a fiduciary standpoint, then if in the future, if anyone could just get up there and speak to the fact of what's most important for these kids versus the emotional side of cutting something, because that's what I would tend to listen to more. And at the same time, yet still, I have to trust staff that they've ranked it in priority. Because listen, we didn't come up with this list. Staff came up with the list. And everybody has suggestions. That's why they asked the individual schools and administrators, what would you like to see cut if you have to cut something? So we're going to try and give a number. Maybe we can reach some middle ground, maybe we can't, but we've been operating for a very, very long time in this school district with not enough money. And then at the last minute, the emotional side kicks in, and we'll just use some of that money, and then we'll take some money from somewhere else, and then things don't get done, and then we end up in the facility standpoint that we are. Because there was a point in time right before I got on the board, they were borrowing millions of dollars to plug in holes here and there. So same thing I've been talking with Mr. Santani with for a long time, Mr. Broussard, Jeremy, staff, like Mr. Guidry probably gets tired of seeing him in his office. We have to eventually cut, and I'm being honest, I truly think that this board is probably the year that things are really going to get cut. I don't think at the last second something's miraculous going to happen, and then we're going to finally say, well, no, you know what, that's enough cutting. Let's just fill it in with something else. We've been operating outside of our capacity for a very, very long time, and we kind of need to wrangle it in. So I'd just like to let everybody know that I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'd rather be honest with everybody. I mean, we've been, it's not necessarily luxuries, just basic reading, writing, and arithmetic. And can we teach these kids and get them off to college and get a great education for themselves, as opposed to all the extras that we've been adding and adding and adding? We got to cut the cable bill nowadays, guys, and we're going to have to get a Fire Stick. We're going to have to figure out something. If anybody understands Fire Sticks, you would get the reference. Justin has 4 of them. All right. So with that being said, I'll stop. Thanks.
I've been regretting this process most of the year. The last 2 years, we've avoided cuts. We've used excess. I don't know. It's not a fault of mine, but I'm an extremely accessible individual. I'm always in my schools. Unfortunately, when I'm going to click this mouse to cut a position, I know the person personally. It's not going to be easy. It's definitely not going to be fun. Some of the people recommended for cuts I saw today. Some of them I spoke to. I know them personally. I know the jobs they do. I do. I'm in a school at least once a week. Sometimes I see all my schools within a week or two when I have the time, either before work or after work. This is not easy. All of you are very important. Trust me, we know that and appreciate all of you. I do. So it's not going to be easy. It's not easy on us. It's not easy on you. But the cuts are here. And we're going to work as close as we can with staff to find, I'm going to do that as much as I can in the next week or two. Well, I think the final vote is maybe next week to send it to public notice. To try to look at every area and avenue we can to limit the cuts we make. Thank you.
All right, if that is all the comments, then this meeting is concluded, and the budget meeting will continue next Tuesday, starting at 5 o'clock. Thank you.